Chapter 192. The Ministry of Justice's yamen was the same as other yamens. There were only 4 bailiffs standing guard at the entrance. However, upon arriving here, one would naturally feel a different vibe from other yamens. It was a somber atmosphere. Although it sounded mysterious, this kind of atmosphere was definitely there. However, while this kind of atmosphere could make the commoners cower, it could not affect a person like D. Renjia. Upon arriving at the Ministry of Justice's yamen, without waiting for him to say anything, Yang Fan walked up and informed the bailiff of D. Renjia's identity. One of the bailiffs immediately reported it to him. Not long after, a long laugh could be heard from within the yamen. An extremely amiable voice said, "Ha ha ha! I heard magpies chirping early in the morning. So it is Master D who has graced us with your presence." D. Renjia winked at Yang Fan. With a light shake of his robes, he stepped forward to welcome the visitor. Following the voice, the refined and elegant Zhou Xing stepped over the threshold with a radiant smile. Just as D. Renjia walked up the steps and was about to bow, Zhou Xing held him up and said with a face full of smiles, "Ayaya, Master D, what are you doing? Can you not be so courteous? Aren't you trying to kill me?" D. Renjia smiled and said, "I am an assistant minister and a minister. There is a difference of 1 rank between us. It is only right for me to bow when we meet." Zhou Xing replied humbly, "Hey, what are you talking about, Grandmaster D? I'm a junior. Back when I was working for Grandmaster D, I received a lot of pointers and teachings from him. In front of Grandmaster D, I'll always be a junior. How would I dare to be arrogant? Master D, please come in quickly. What instructions do you have for me today?" As Zhou Xing spoke, he very naturally held onto D. Renjia's arm and helped him into the yamen. He was exceptionally careful as he ascended and descended the steps and crossed the threshold. His attentive manner was that of a person who was extremely respectful to his elders. His expression and actions were definitely not pretentious at all. If not for his fierce reputation, no one would believe that this person was Zhou Xing. D. Renjia allowed Zhou Xing to support him. As they walked into the yamen, he said, "Minister Zhou, I really have a favor to ask of you today." Zhou Xing hurriedly replied, "You're being too polite, Master D. If you need anything, you can just send someone over to let me know. How could I trouble you? I wonder what Master D needs. Feel free to let me know. As long as it's within my capabilities, I'll definitely do it." D. Renjia said, "Haha, this is really a piece of cake for you, Minister Zhou. I don't know if the Duke of Yan is currently imprisoned in the Ministry of Justice's prison or in Luoyang Prefecture. No matter where he is, he's under your control, Minister Zhou. I would like to see him. Minister Zhou, are you willing to help me with this?" Hearing this, Zhou Xing couldn't help but exclaim. He stopped in his tracks and asked, "Master D wants to see He Yichangji?" "That's right." D. Renjia also stopped. He was still smiling, but his eyes were very sharp. He stared at him and asked, "How is it?" Zhou Xing's slightly startled expression quickly disappeared. He sighed sadly and said, "Although it's against the law to have a private meeting, since Master D has asked, there's no reason for me to refuse." "It's just that." D. Renjia's expression tensed up. He pressed on, "It's just that what?" Zhou Xing sighed again and said, "It's just that this He Yichangji, I'm afraid that even if Master D were to see him, it would be useless." D. Renjia's heart immediately tightened. He asked in a deep voice, "Minister, what do you mean by that?" Zhou Xing said regretfully, someone reported that He Yichangji had rebelled, and the Empress issued an edict to bring him back to Luojing for trial. I was still thinking that since He Yichangji has always been loyal to the imperial court, who knows if it might be a false accusation. I was planning to properly investigate the case. If he was really wronged, I might be able to clear his name. Who knew that he would actually hang himself right after being sent to the Ministry of Justice's prison? This person really can't take things too seriously. Hearing this, Yang Fan couldn't help but be shocked. He Yichangji was a great general of the border who commanded tens of thousands of troops, a dignified duke, and had been escorted all the way to the capital without seeking death. Just after entering the Ministry of Justice's prison, he actually committed suicide? Such a serious criminal, under the strict supervision of the Ministry of Justice's heavenly prison, had actually committed suicide? Zhou Xing shook his head and sighed repeatedly. Di Renjie stopped in his tracks and raised his head. Gazing at the dusk sky, he let out a long sigh. "Thank you, Brother Cha." Duo gratefully thanked a messenger from Luoyang Prefecture. She then asked, "May I ask where this Ministry of Justice Yamen is located?" Seeing her handsome eyebrows, large eyes, and pretty and adorable appearance, the messenger's temper also became especially gentle. After giving her a few more pointers, Duo finally took her leave. Duoduo's wife was a Turkic. She had a foreigner named Ayegali. Because of the civil war between the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganate, she had lost her family and clansmen. After experiencing many hardships, she escaped to White River. She had even been raped and had a miscarriage. Later on, she was taken in as a concubine by He Yichangji. After gradually gaining favor, she was made a concubine. He Yichangji even gave her a Han nickname, Chunyo, Duo was the daughter of an old soldier who had died on the battlefield. She also had Turkic blood, but because of the mixed blood of the common people in the border area, it wasn't so obvious. He Yichangji pitted her loneliness and adopted her at a young age. Although she was only a maid, he treated her as his adopted daughter. After Chunyo married into his family, Duo had always served her. The two of them were like sisters. When He Yichangji was arrested, Duo was accompanying Chunyo to the shaman's place to pray for the child in her belly. He Yichangji and his other family members were all arrested. After He Yichangji was arrested on the charge of rebellion, the deputy commander of the Heiyuan army, Lu Shirda, secretly instructed Madame Chun to bring all the evidence to Luoyang to seek justice from Di Renjie. Lu Shirda was also a famous general of the Tang dynasty. He had fought against the Tubo Empire and won 8 battles. He Yichangji was the deputy commander of the Heiyuan army. He was in charge of farming. The Heiyuan army opened up 5,000 hectares of farmland and became self-sufficient in food. Thus, the border army was not affected by the political turmoil of the court and could still maintain a strong military force to intimidate others. Lu Shirda could be said to have made great contributions. Lu Shirda knew He Yichangji very well. He knew that this comrade was loyal to the Tang dynasty and had no intention of rebelling. That was why he took the risk to remind Madame Chun. Di Renjie had seen countless talents in his life, but there were times when he made a mistake. Although he and Lu Shirda were both loyal and capable officials of the Tang dynasty, Di Renjie had always disliked Lu Shirda, probably because of his temperament. Although the two were of the same age, the generous Lu Shirda was like a tolerant elder brother. He never felt disobedient and especially admired Di Renjie's talent. Di Renjie had offended Prime Minister Zhang Guangfu over the distribution of the spoils of war. When he was demoted to Jiangnan, Lu Shirda had written to Empress Wu many times to complain about Di Renjie's injustice. Now that He Yichangji was in trouble, Lu Shirda believed that the only way to save him was to seek help from the resourceful Di Renjie. Therefore, he secretly instructed Madame Chun to go to the capital to find Di Renjie. Chun Niuer had a big belly. Accompanied by her good sister Duo, she traveled a long distance and secretly followed her husband all the way to the capital. At this time, she was about to give birth. Duo accompanied her to a rented house and fed her some hot porridge. Seeing that her labor pain was gradually disappearing, Duo let out a sigh of relief. Chun Niuer was worried about her husband. She had just recovered, so she urged Duo to inquire about her husband's whereabouts and find Di Renjie's house to complain about her injustice. Duo inquired along the way and found the yamen of Luoyang's prefectural magistrate. When she learned that the general had been escorted to the Ministry of Justice, she hurried there. When Duo arrived at the Ministry of Justice, Zhou Xing had just seen Di Renjie off. Looking at Di Renjie's receding figure, Zhou Xing laughed coldly and returned to the yamen with a wave of his sleeve. At this time, Duo happened to come over and asked the yamen runner who was guarding the gate for news of He Yichangji. Zhou Xing had just returned to his office, but before he could sit down, a trusted subordinate quickly walked in. With a secretive expression, he said, "Minister, just now at the yamen's gate, I saw a woman asking about He Yichangji's whereabouts." This person was one of Zhou Xing's trusted subordinates. His name was Yuan Chaoyan, and his position was not high. He was only a manager of the Ministry of Justice's yamen. So whenever he had the chance, he would do his best to curry favor with Zhou Xing. He often showed his face in front of his superiors. Whenever there was an opportunity for promotion, his superiors would easily think of him. When Zhou Xing heard that it was a woman asking about He Yichangji's whereabouts, he immediately became suspicious. He Yichangji had just been escorted to the capital, so not many people knew about him. Even if some old acquaintances wanted to visit him or ask about him, it should be a man. Why was it a woman? This woman was probably not related to He Yichangji, so it was very likely that she had followed him to the capital. If she was only He Yichangji's relative or his woman, and had followed him to the capital out of concern for his safety, then it was not a big deal. But he was afraid that Zhou Xing was alarmed. He immediately asked, "What kind of woman?" Yuan Chaoyan replied, "She is young and very pretty. However, she was dressed in attire and looked travel-worn. Her skin was slightly tanned and her accent did not sound like a native of Luoyang." Zhou Xing's eyes immediately narrowed like a cat that had spotted a mouse. He pressed, "Where is she now?" Yuan Chaoyan said, as if he was presenting a treasure, "I saw her asking about He Yichangji's whereabouts at the yamen's gate." Zhou Xing could not contain his anger. He gave Yuan Chaoyan a resounding slap and scolded, "Bastard! Number one idiot in the world. I'm asking you, where is she now?" Yuan Chaoyan did not understand why Zhou Xing was so angry. Clutching his face, he stammered, Probably still at the yamen's gate." Zhou Xing sent a flying kick at Yuan Chaoyan. Not daring to dodge, Yuan Chaoyan staggered. Zhou Xing roared, "Get out! Capture that woman and bring her into the residence." Yuan Chaoyan was scared out of his wits. He could not understand how his flattery had backfired. He hurriedly ran out, but by the time he reached the yamen's gate, the young woman had already disappeared. Yuan Chaoyan hurriedly asked the yamen runner, who was guarding the gate. Yuan Chaoyan was usually a bootlicker and bully, so he had very poor relations with others. Although the yamen runner did not dare to hide anything from him, he could not be bothered to explain in detail either. He casually pointed forward, and Yuan Chaoyan was like a dog that had seen its owner throw a bone at it, happily giving chase. Chapter 193. Duo was shocked to learn that Ah Lang had committed suicide from the mouth of the Ministry of Justice Yamen. She did not believe that Ah Lang would commit suicide, commanding an army of 100,000. His name shaking the Tubo and Turkic Khaganate. Such an awe-inspiring great general, enduring all the trials and tribulations along the way, had actually committed suicide right after he was imprisoned? With tears in her eyes, Duo hurried back. She wanted to tell Madame this unfortunate news, so she walked very quickly. Yuan Chaoyan chased her to the busy street, only to see people coming and going, bustling with activity. How could he find a woman dressed in Hu clothes? In the Tang dynasty, it was popular to wear Hu clothes outside, and the streets were filled with women in Hu clothes. Helpless, Yuan Chaoyan dejectedly returned to the Ministry of Justice and paced back and forth, not daring to see Zhou Xing for fear that he would be scolded again. After pacing around for a long time, he saw the imperial bodyguard still standing at the entrance of the yamen. His heart thumping, he asked him, "What did that woman ask all of you about?" When he heard what Miss Duoduo asked, he was instantly overjoyed. Feeling that he had something to boast about to Zhou Xing, he dared to seek an audience with Zhou Xing. When Yuan Chaoyan saw Zhou Xing, he timidly told him that the woman had disappeared without a trace. Before Zhou Xing could get angry, Yuan Chaoyan immediately flattered him by saying that he had heard that the woman had asked the yamen runners about Di Renjia's residence. Zhou Xing was infuriated when he heard it and gave Yuan Chaoyan another slap. The force was so strong that even a few of Yuan Chaoyan's teeth fell out. Zhou Xing could not be bothered with this idiot and kicked him away. He began to think urgently. Why did she look for Di Renjia? Is it just to save someone? The plot to frame He Qi Changji is full of loopholes. If she has any evidence, no, I must find her. This matter concerns the ownership of 100,000 border soldiers. This force must be in the hands of Minister Wu. Only then will we have more confidence in the fight for Crown Prince. You go. This lowly one is here. Before Zhou Xing could finish, Yuan Chaoyan hurried over. With a mouthful of blood in his mouth, he squeezed out a flattering smile. It looked a little creepy. Zhou Xing thought for a moment and waved his hand. Get out! Yuan Chaoyan's smile froze on his face. He didn't even dare to let out a fart. He quickly ran out with his legs tucked between his legs. Zhou Xing shook his head lightly and thought to himself, this won't do. Black-toothed Changji gang has just died, and there's no guarantee that there won't be someone keeping an eye on the Ministry of Justice. Furthermore, the Ministry of Justice is the place where investigations are conducted, and there's a limit to the number of officers we have. We won't be able to investigate this woman. I'll have to report this matter to Minister Wu and have him send someone to investigate. In front of the palace, Di Renjia stopped in his tracks and said to Yang Fan, when Guang Yuan returns home one day, why don't you come to my place for a gathering? Let's have some fun together. Junior obeys. Yang Fan bowed deeply. Di Renjia stroked his beard and said, regarding Xinke Miao's matter, wait for your two companions to find out the truth. Then combine it with the documents sent to me by the Luoyang Prefecture and analyze them one by one before continuing the investigation. This case is complicated and confusing. It is not something that can be solved in a short period of time. Yang Fan responded again. Di Renjia glanced in the direction of the Ministry of Justice and sighed sadly. The light of the setting sun dragged his shadow for a very, very long time. The Di family's coachman drove an ox cart over from afar. Di Renjia stepped onto the cart and waved to Yang Fan with a heavy heart. The cart creaked as it left the palace. Compared to Xinke Miao's death, Di Renjia was more concerned about the situation in Longyu after Black-Toothed Chang's death. Xinke Miao's death was only a matter of one family, but the person who would take over the position of Qingyuan Taoist secretary after Black-Toothed Chang's death was a matter that concerned the safety of the country. Tubo had contacted the Eastern Turks many times to invade Heshi, and Heshi was the barrier of Guanzhong. Guanzhong was the foundation of the Tang dynasty. The sudden loss of a wise commander-in-chief was a great blow to the morale of the army. If a mediocre person were to take over, the situation in the western regions would be out of control. Because of this important position could not fall into the hands of a mediocre person and become a tool for internal strife. But after he returned to the capital, he temporarily stayed at home to recuperate. Even if he was still in court, it was not appropriate for him to interfere in the affairs of the Ministry of War with his status as the assistant minister. What should he do? The ox cart slowly traveled. When it passed by Shangshan Workshop, Di Renjia looked through the window at the tall and majestic building of Princess Taiping's residence in the distance. His heart suddenly moved. Since Taiping intends to interfere in court politics, then let's start by seizing the military power in Longyu. The military power in Longyu must be in the hands of a reliable person. We must not open the door to the western regions because of the struggle for the throne. Shinmu must also help this old man. These aristocratic families are incomparably strong in court and in the wilderness. We cannot let that little fox stay out of this. The ox cart traveled from north to south across Luoyang City. Di Renjie sat in the cart, and along the way he had already made a detailed deduction and arrangement for the military arrangements in Longyu after the death of He Chi-chang. And the military arrangements in Longyu would inevitably involve the political struggle in the court. He also had a plan for the few big and complicated forces in the court. Yang Fan naturally did not think that High Duke Di had already thought so far ahead. But he also knew that Di Renjie valued the death of He Chi-chang far more than the death of Miao Shinka. Looking at him, it seemed that he did not want to let this matter go. Yang Fan could not help but secretly rejoice. Old man Di was really not simple. Today he only walked around and took a look at the Miao Shinka, but he had almost guessed the entire process of him sneaking into the Miao Shinka and forcing Miao Shinka to commit suicide. This person was really too scary. If he were to go all out to investigate, it was really hard to say whether the clues would lead to him. Fortunately, the case of He Chi-chang had attracted Di Renjie's attention. This old man was much more interested in He Chi-chang than Miao Shinka. Yang Fan calculated along the way and returned to the palace with Zhang Shidong and the others. He reported to the brigade Marshal Su Liang and returned to Jiaqing to rest. In the evening, Yang Fan had finished his dinner and was chatting with Zhang Shidong and the others outside the barracks. Suddenly, he saw a few people walking in the distance. They were all dressed in short clothes and had graceful figures. When they walked, they were like willows swaying in the wind. It was very moving. When he looked carefully, it was Xia Xiaoman, Gao Ying, Lan Yiqing, and a few other internal guards. Yang Fan stood up and went forward. When Lan Yiqing saw him from afar, a smile appeared on her round apple face. She said excitedly, "Big brother Yang." Yang Fan smiled and gestured to her. He said to Xia Xiaoman, "Xiaowei, it's so late. Where are you going?" Xia Xiaoman said, "There's an important case. Great General Wu Yi ordered us to go out of the palace to help investigate." When Yang Fan heard this, it was not appropriate for him to ask more. He said, "Be careful." Xia Xiaoman glanced at him and could feel his sincere concern. She could not help but smile sweetly. When Gao Ying saw Yang Fan's condescending attitude and how he only cared about Xia Xiaoman, she couldn't help but feel a bit sour in her heart. She left Yang Fan's side, but after walking a short distance, Gao Ying coughed and said to Xia Xiaoman, "Xiaoman, you also know that Yang Fan is now on good terms with that person." "Yes, what's wrong?" "If you want to take his love away, you might hurt yourself. Some people can't be touched." Xia Xiaoman was angry and embarrassed. She said, "You really? How can there be such a thing? He and I are brothers, okay?" Gao Ying said quietly, "Can a man and a woman be brothers? If you are brothers with him, then you and I are husband and wife." Xia Xiaoman rolled her eyes and said in a man's voice, "Wife, don't say too much. I know what to do." Gao Ying. Yang Fan watched as Xia Xiaoman and her valiant army of women left. He was about to turn back when Huang Xuchang suddenly came from afar and shouted, "Inform all the brothers who are not on duty today to come to Xian Wu Gate immediately. The great general has an important matter for you." After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, Yang Fan, Zhang Shidong, and the rest appeared at Xian Wu Gate. Wu Yi said to them solemnly, "There's a big case. A few Turkic spies have infiltrated Luojing and have stolen detailed information about our military deployment and weapons. They are preparing to escape back to the Turkic Khaganate. If this information is obtained by the Turkic Khaganate, our Longyu army will suffer heavy losses." The soldiers were shocked when they heard this. Wu Yi continued, "This case is of great importance. I have already sent the inner guards to investigate these spies. Due to the lack of manpower, I have transferred all of you as well. Remember, if you find the Turkic spies, kill them on the spot. But you must bring back the important information they are carrying." Su Liang added, "After you leave the palace, there will be people to receive you. They are two young Turkic women. They have information about the Tang dynasty's military deployment in Longyu. Since the Tang dynasty is negotiating peace with the Turkic Khaganate, this kind of private confrontation should not be made public. So once you catch the two spies, kill them immediately and retrieve the bag. That will be considered a great merit. Wu Yi's gaze swept across the faces of the 100 cavalry guards and finally landed on Yang Fan's face. In a deep voice, he said, the palace had previously sent internal guards to track the whereabouts of these two female spies. They had already found their residence, but for some unknown reason, the information was leaked and they were a step too late. They escaped. Now the inner guards are searching everywhere. Due to the lack of manpower, I have gathered all of you. They escaped from Daoguang Market. It's getting late and the curfew will be implemented soon. So the two women can't have gone too far. So your search area will be near Daoguang Market. Whoever can find them, kill them, and retrieve the bag. I will promote him to brigade marshal. The soldiers were invigorated when they heard this reward. The city gate tower was instantly filled with murderous intent. Wu Yi nodded his head in satisfaction and waved his hand, saying, military orders must be obeyed. Execute it immediately. A series of footsteps carrying a murderous aura quickly left the black tortoise gate tower. More than 50 cavalrymen walked out from the deep and strong city gate hole. It was already night time, and they were the last batch of people to leave the imperial palace. The palace gate slowly closed behind them, cutting off the last ray of sunset. Chapter 194. The reward of capturing a Turkic spy and immediately being promoted to a brigade commander made every guard fervent. When they arrived at the Daoguang Market, they immediately split up and began their search. Perhaps it was because the reward Wu Yui had promised was too great, but there was only one position for a brigade commander. If the two of them managed to capture the assassin at the same time, who would get the credit? Even if it was spread out, it was still not worth it for each person to fish up an entire team. Thus, as the search area expanded, the guards began to quietly distance themselves from their companions and search in different directions. Each of them believed that luck would be on their side. Halt! Who's there? It was already past the curfew time. Two patrolling officials carrying lanterns walked over from afar. Suddenly seeing Yang Fan holding a steel saber in his hand, they couldn't help but nervously reach for the saber at their waist. When they saw clearly that Yang Fan was wearing the attire of an imperial guard, they couldn't help but be startled. Yang Fan waved his token at them, and the two cautiously approached. After identifying Yang Fan's token, they hurriedly bowed and left. Strange. What happened today? I encountered 3 Imperial Army guards on the way here. What's so strange about running into Imperial Army guards? Lucier and the other 2 even ran into people from the internal guards. Something big must have happened. Be careful when patrolling. The 2 patrolling officials quietly whispered in each other's ears as they left. Yang Fan's brow furrowed as he stood on the street. Scanning the quiet night, he began to ponder the possible locations of the 2 Turkic spies. Once important information such as military deployment and weaponry was grasped by the enemy, the consequences would be unimaginable. Moreover, if the enemy were to grasp this information, it would be very difficult to change it. Could the entire army be changed? The number of soldiers stationed there was closely related to the strategic intentions of the army, as well as the geography. It wasn't something that could be changed at will. The weapons of the army were also closely related to their daily training. How could they be changed at will? How much combat power would they be able to display if they were to change? Fortresses built over many years were built according to the number of troops needed to be stationed, the role they played in the war, and the geographical location of the military. Once the troops and weapons were changed, they would lose most of their functions, and building a new fortress, not to mention the huge expenditure of money and resources. Even if one wanted to build one, it would not be done in a day. The Turks and Tubo armies by the borders were no weaker than the Tang dynasty. Due to the instability of the Tang dynasty, their current power was even greater than that of the Tang dynasty. Under these circumstances, if this intelligence really fell into the hands of the Turks and allowed them to know the Tang dynasty's military deployment in Longyu like the back of their hands, the results could be easily imagined. Thus, Yang Fan did everything he could to find the two Turkic spies. In particular, once he caught two spies, he would be promoted to the rank of brigade marshal. This temptation was equally significant to Yang Fan. He stood at the end of the street and thought hard. Where can these two spies escape to? In a granary in Tsang City, Duo walked around Chunyer with a lantern in her hand. She was so anxious that her face was covered in sweat. She cried, "Madam, how are you? What should we do?" Chunyer lay on the ground. Her face was covered in beads of sweat. She rubbed her bulging belly and said in pain, "I can't do it anymore. I'm afraid I'm about to give birth." Tsang City was located in the northeast corner of the imperial city. It was a large granary of Luoyang. The city was divided into two parts, the granary area and the administrative area. They were currently in an underground granary in the granary area. The granaries here were arranged in an orderly manner. Each granary was in the shape of an inverted trapezoid, with a large mouth and a small bottom. The walls were smooth and hard after being baked. The bottom was covered with wooden planks and was a certain distance from the ground to prevent moisture. The granary they were in was empty. Because of the frequent wars in the western region, coupled with the drought and flood disasters in several places that needed relief, a large amount of grain was transferred, so several granaries were empty. Now it was the end of spring, and the new grain had not been harvested. So these empty granaries were idle, and there was no one to guard them. It was a coincidence that they were able to escape the pursuit of the inner guards. When the inner guards split up to search for their whereabouts, Duo and Chunyer, who had heard the news of her husband's death, hugged each other and cried bitterly. With great difficulty, they stopped crying and calmed Chunyer down. Duo wiped away her tears and went out to buy some food. At this moment, Lan Yiqing, the inner guard, was showing his waist token to a neighbor and asking for information about a woman with similar characteristics to Duo. Duo heard everything clearly from the food stall next door. She saw that the woman was wearing an official's robe and had a sharp blade at her waist. She felt that something was wrong. Fortunately, she didn't chase after them and continued to investigate. Otherwise, Lan Yiqing would have detected her. When Lan Yiqing asked the question, he didn't think that the person she was looking for was actually in the other shop behind them. Due to a freak combination of factors, Duo escaped this calamity. Duo rushed back to tell Chunyer, and Chunyer immediately sensed danger. She was the daughter of a large Turkic family, and she had followed Blacktooth Changji for several years. Her knowledge and experience were far greater than Duo's. She immediately asked Duo to pack up and helped her escape from the residence. By the time Lan Yiqing found out where they lived and came to investigate, the two had already escaped. Both master and servant fled in a panic. Because it was evening, all the shops had begun to close. The two of them felt danger when they saw people, so they fled to the edge of Tsang City. This place was already remote, and because the curfew was approaching, there were no pedestrians on the streets. It would be too conspicuous if they tried to escape to another shop. However, if they stayed on the streets, they would definitely be discovered by the night patrol. The two fled along Tsang City and found a dangerous wall. There was a triangular vertical wall built diagonally to block it. With no other choice, the woman who was about to give birth climbed up the wall and hid inside Tsang City. This way, the two were temporarily safe. However, Chunyer, who was about to give birth, had affected the fetus and unexpectedly went into premature labor. At this moment, a lot of amniotic fluid was already flowing out from her crotch. What should we do? What should we do? Duo, who had no experience in delivering babies, was so anxious that she ran around in circles. She found a lantern in the old guard's room above the warehouse, as well as a set of shabby military clothes. Thinking that it was a bit cold in Tsang City, she brought it with her to keep her mistress warm. However, as a girl, this was all she could do. Seeing her mistress in unbearable pain, she could only run around in circles helplessly. Unexpectedly, she found that her mistress was about to give birth. This made her anxious. Chun Nur was a girl who grew up in a grassland tribe. Not only had she delivered cows and horses, but she had also served as the tribe's midwife's assistant several times out of curiosity. She had also given birth before, and although she had a miscarriage, she had far more experience in this area than Duo. She knew that after her long journey and emotional ups and downs, as well as climbing over the wall and shaking her body, she was about to give birth. However, she was not as flustered as Duo. Duo, you go get some water. We need to boil some hot water for the child to use when it's born. Go, don't worry about me. You can't help me here anyway. Go and be careful. Oh. Duo wiped away her tears and looked at Chun Nur in bewilderment. Gripping the dagger at her waist, she rushed out. Chun Nur leaned against the wall and looked at her crotch. The amniotic fluid had already moistened the ground, and the pain in her abdomen was unbearable. However, there were still no signs that the child was about to be born. Clenching her teeth, she tore off a piece of cloth and bit it in her mouth. Using the method that the tribe's midwives had taught other women, she took short and rapid breaths. Enduring the intense pain, she exerted strength in her waist and abdomen, wanting to give birth. Her tribe had originally been a Sogdian, but ever since the Sui dynasty, their entire tribe had been assimilated into the Turks and brought under the rule of the Western Turks. During the civil war between the Eastern and Western Turks, their tribe had suffered great losses. In the chaos of war, she had been separated from her people, drifting all the way to the Tang-ruled White Water Stream City. It was Blacktooth Changji who had taken her in, given her a new life, and doted on her. He had allowed her to end her wandering days, and he had given her the generous and warm embrace of a man. Although Blacktooth Changji was an old man in his 60s and was much older than her, he was an eagle of the grasslands, a true hero who galloped on the battlefield and shook the western regions. The children of the grasslands worshipped heroes the most. She loved her husband and revered him even more, seeing him as the heavens. If possible, she would not hesitate to sacrifice her own life, as long as she could protect him. Now her husband had been wronged and had died with hatred in his heart. All she wanted now was to clear her husband's name and avenge him. She also wanted to give birth to her husband's flesh and blood. She could not let anything happen to this child. But she could not give birth. Chun Nur pounded the ground in pain, enduring the tearing pain. Duo had not returned yet, and the silent cellar was empty. Only her heavy breathing and the occasional moan could be heard. The light only illuminated the area 3 feet in front of her, and everything else was hidden in darkness. She had a feeling that she had been abandoned by the whole world, and she was the only one left here. No, she wasn't alone. She still had a child that was connected to her by blood. However, she clearly felt that the child was falling hard and should be born soon, but she still couldn't welcome the sudden feeling of relief and hear the child's cries. The amniotic fluid and blood had already flowed all over the ground. She sat in a pool of blood, sweating and tears in her eyes, struggling bitterly. Chun Nur struggled to sit up and reached her hand under her skirt. There was no one to help her, so she wanted to give birth to the child herself, so that her child could be safely born into this world. Her husband's death had already made her despair, and her child was now her only hope. She would rather die than let anything happen to her child. But when her trembling hand groped around her lower body, she could not help but let out a cry of despair. She felt one of her child's feet, a small foot that had already reached out of the opening of her uterus. The child was not born smoothly, but in this kind of environment, her child was not born smoothly. She remembered very clearly that the midwives in her clan had said that if the child was born in reverse, the biggest possibility was that both mother and child would die. The most experienced midwives would make their mothers suffer a great deal of pain. They would use every method they could think of to protect one of their mothers with a very small chance of success. However, the midwife was currently isolated and helpless. The amniotic fluid was almost gone. If this continued, the fetus would definitely die in the womb, and the child would suffocate. Duo, duo! Chen Nier cried out in despair. She was no longer afraid. She no longer worried that her voice would be heard by anyone. As long as she could see her child, even if she had to hold him in her arms, listen to his heartbeat, look at his appearance, and then immediately die, she was willing to do so. Duo, duo! Duo, duo! Duo, duo! The echo echoed in the empty granary. Duo, duo had not returned yet. Chen Nier's eyes were blurred with tears. She cried in despair, and her fingers suddenly touched the hilt of the knife at her waist. Chapter 195. Yang Fan cautiously searched a few streets and finally used his Imperial Army token to open the door of the Daozhong Lane. Accompanied by Basho, they searched a few households that had rooms for rent. By the time he walked out of the Daozhong Lane, the sky was filled with twinkling stars, and it was already the 4th watch period. Yang Fan carried the lantern and wanted to give up on the night search. The 2 foreign women were indeed an obvious target, but Luoyang was simply too big. Fortunately, the 2 Turkic women had already closed the city gates when they escaped, and the bridges connecting the north and south cities were also heavily guarded. It was unlikely that they had escaped to the south city. In this case, as long as they were still in the north city, the search area would be much smaller. It was impossible to disturb and interrogate every household at night, so it would be better to search tomorrow morning. But when he reached the main street, he suddenly noticed a vertical wall on the High Palace wall opposite him. It was a dangerous wall. Due to the collapse of the ground, the top of the wall was leaning outwards. It would be too expensive to repair the entire wall, so a vertical wall was built to support the wall. Yang Fan knew that Song City was behind this wall, and he couldn't help but have a thought. After he came to Luoyang, he carried a blood feud with him, and his enemies were all from the bureaucracy. He had expected that the process of revenge would be difficult, and he had thought about where to hide if his identity was exposed. Song City was one of his considerations. Would the 2 Turkic women think of this? Yang Fan thought, and his eyes gradually narrowed. He walked to the wall and raised his head to look at the vertical wall. The base of the wall only reached his waist, and above it was a sloping wall that could be easily climbed. Yang Fan threw the lantern on the ground and stepped on it to extinguish it. He moved the saber to the position where it was easiest to pull out and leaped onto the wall, walking up step by step. After he was transferred into the 100 Cavalry, the weapon he was equipped with was the saber. There were 4 types of sabers in the Tang army. The ceremonial saber was mainly used in various ceremonies. Although it was gorgeous, it was inferior to the other 3 sabers in actual combat. The Mo saber was a heavy weapon, and its shape was somewhat similar to a horse-slaying sword. It was extremely sharp on the battlefield, but it was cumbersome to use in the palace. The remaining 2 types of sabers were the horizontal saber and the ambush saber. The ambush saber was shorter than the horizontal saber, and it was the only saber among the 4 that had a curved arc. It was light and nimble, and it was convenient for close combat. At the same time, once it pierced into a person's body, it could cause a second injury to the enemy when it was pulled out. Thus, the saber that the 100 cavalrymen usually carried was the ambush saber. After Chen Nier and Duo Duo escaped into Song City, they did not run too far away. They were not familiar with this place. Moreover, when Duo Duo slid down the wall to get Chen Nier down, Chen Nier paused for a moment. Her pregnancy was affected, so she could not run any further. They escaped into a nearby warehouse. When Duo Duo rushed out to look for a water source, she was already frightened by the sight of Madame's lower body bleeding and in unbearable pain. In her haste, she did not close the door, so Yang Fan quickly noticed the cellar. Leading to the cellar was a narrow staircase. Yang Fan held a saber and stood at the side of the doorway. He looked inside and then tiptoed down. In the darkness, he walked down the stone steps step by step. When he reached the end, he heard the cries of a baby. In a dark night like this, deep underground, in a place where one could not even see their fingers if they stretched out their hands, suddenly hearing the cries of a baby. Even though Yang Fan had always been bold, he could not help but have goosebumps. He carefully poked his head out and glanced into the cellar. In the huge and spacious cellar he saw a lamp. In the vast darkness, the lamp gave off a warm and quiet orange light. In the darkness, it formed a hazy ball of light that was no more than a few feet in radius. In the center of that ball of light lay a woman. Because it was too far away, even with Yang Fan's eyesight, he could not see clearly. He held his breath and gripped his saber tightly. He walked over step by step, getting closer and closer to that hazy ball of light. At this time he saw it. He saw a woman. This woman was leaning against the wall, half-sitting. Her hair was disheveled, and her body, hands, and even face were covered in blood. She seemed to be holding something in her arms, and the baby's cries suddenly rang out again. The woman moved, as if she was stretching her arms, and then the baby's cries stopped again. Yang Fan stood in the darkness and did not take another step forward. He just quietly watched. It turned out that the endless darkness behind the woman was a wall. No wonder he could not see clearly when he was standing at the entrance. He saw that from the waist down, the woman's moon-white dress was completely dyed red. Under the weak light, the bloodstains were not that striking, but because of her pale face and the bloodstains all over her body, it was frightening to look at. Her intestines, Yang Fan shivered and did not dare to look any further. He quickly moved his gaze to her face. In her arms he found that she was holding a baby, a naked, blood-stained baby. The baby was held in her arms and was vigorously sucking on it. The woman was looking down at her child, her face filled with sweetness and happiness. Her chest was bared, and her plump breasts looked strangely white and tender after being stained with blood. They shone with an enchanting luster under the orange light. But who would have the slightest vulgar thought when seeing such a holy scene in front of them? Yang Fan felt his heart stuck in his throat. He wanted to speak, but he did not have the courage to say a single word. He wanted to move forward, but his legs were weak and he could not take a single step. He had started killing people since he was 13. He had killed bandits and rebels, and he had also killed officials of the imperial court. He had never imagined that he would become so weak at the sight of blood that he could not even hold a knife. As his eyes adapted to the darkness, he could clearly see that the woman's abdomen had been cut open. This newborn baby had been cut open by her and taken out, and she ignored the terrible state of her abdomen and held the newborn baby in her arms, breastfeeding. Breastfeeding was a very warm matter, but in this kind of situation it was horrifying. Thump! Yang Fan had never felt that the knife in his hand was so heavy. The saber was not considered heavy, but his hands were so weak that he could not hold it. The tip of the saber touched the floor, emitting a soft sound. Although this sound was soft, it was abnormally clear in this quiet warehouse where even the sound of a baby sucking could be heard. The woman suddenly held the baby in her arms tightly and stared with wide eyes. Looking at the darkness in front of her, she softly asked, "Who is it?" "Duo." Her voice was not loud, as if she was afraid of scaring the child in her arms. Yang Fan took a deep breath. Using a great deal of strength, he lifted the knife in his hand and slowly walked forward. Under the light, the figure of Yang Fan gradually appeared. He was wearing a folded scarf on his head and a red handkerchief on the outside. He was wearing a short robe, a wide leather belt, a half-moon wrapped around his stomach, tight military trousers, and a pair of short leather boots. In his hand was a shining knife that flashed with a cold light under the light. Chun Niuer's eyes flashed with despair. She lowered her head and sadly looked at the child who was trying his best to suck on her nipple, completely unaware of what his mother was going through. 2 teardrops fell onto his blood-stained face. Chun Niuer slowly raised her head and looked at Yang Fan with pleading eyes. She softly said, I beg you, let me stay with my child a little longer. Let him eat a few more mouthfuls." Tears rolled down her face. Chen Niuer choked with sobs and said, "He is my son. We are mother and son in this life. For me, this life is only this night. This moment is so short, so short. I know that there is no way for me to survive. My newborn son is the same. When I decided to go to the capital, someone told me this would happen. I am not afraid of death. I only beg you, let me stay with my son a little longer. He has just been born." Yang Fan's throat tightened. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said with difficulty, "You are bleeding," Chen Niu sadly said. "I know, I am already hopeless. I know, I am going to die." Yang Fan stared at her and suddenly asked, "You are not a Turkic spy?" Chen Niu looked at him with some surprise and asked, "Turkic spy? Is that what the person who sent you told you?" Without waiting for Yang Fan's reply, Chen Niu raised her voice with pride and arrogance, loudly declared, "I am not a Turkic spy. I am the woman of great General He Yichangji, wife of He Yichangji." Yang Fan's pupils suddenly shrank. He believed Chen Niuer's words. She had no need to lie. At this time, there was no need for her to lie. In addition, He Yichangji inexplicably hanged himself today, and the deep love she showed for her son at this moment. It was not easy to believe that the Turkic Turks sent a woman to be a spy, let alone a woman who was pregnant. Yang Fan said in a deep voice, "I don't have any medicine on me, but I can help you bandage your wound. Or I can find a doctor." Chen Niu looked at the soldier in front of her in surprise. In her husband's army, she only saw that military orders were like mountains. She had never seen a soldier who dared to disobey orders. But this soldier in front of her. Chen Niu asked in surprise, "You want to save me?" Yang Fan said, "If what you said is true, I will never hand you over. I will save you." Chen Niuer's eyes lit up. Her face became even paler, and her voice became even weaker. But her eyes that were full of despair suddenly burst out with a brilliance that was even brighter than the light from the lamp. It was so bright that Yang Fan did not dare to look directly at her. "Thank you, I can't do it. I know I am going to die soon. If possible, please save my son. I beg you. I only want him to live. As long as he lives, it's fine." In the end, Chen Niu did not say that she still had a maid here. Perhaps she still had a trace of doubt about the soldier's words. But this soldier was her only hope before her death. Whether she lived or died, it was impossible for the soldier in front of her to leave her body and child here. She could only hope that what Yang Fan said was sincere. Only then could she leave in peace. She looked at Yang Fan with eyes full of gratitude. She wanted to send the child over, but she just held her child, bent her arms, and stopped moving. The brilliance in her eyes gradually disappeared. She was dead. Yang Fan slowly walked to her side and knelt down on one knee. In his eyes, women had always been weak. He never knew that a woman's courage could make him feel such awe, as if he had seen a god. He carefully took the child from Chen Niuer's arms. The naked baby with the umbilical cord tied in a knot and the bloodstains all over his body didn't know that his mother had already left this world. He was eating happily when he was suddenly hugged away. He couldn't help but burst into tears. Yang Fan held the child in front of his chest and looked at the great woman who had already passed away. Her eyes were not closed. His voice was very soft, as if he was afraid of waking her up. He used a somewhat hoarse but unusually solemn voice to say, "Your son will live well, I swear." Chapter 196. "Madam, I got some water, madam. Yang Fan had just unwrapped himself and was about to put the baby in his arms when suddenly a girl's urgent cry came from behind. Yang Fan turned around and saw a girl with 3 braids flashing out of the dark night. "Madam." When Duo saw the scene in front of her, she suddenly froze. Her hand loosened, and the pot in her hand fell to the ground with a bang, shattering into pieces. Steam rose up, and the light shone on the steam, enveloping her as if she was hidden in a cloud of fog. "Beast, I'll kill you." Duodua's dull eyes slowly moved away from Chun Nir's bloody body and met Yang Fan's eyes. Her eyes suddenly flashed a chilling light. She pulled out the dagger at her waist and gritted her teeth as she pounced on Yang Fan. Bang! Duodua's body tilted and fell heavily to the ground. She was suddenly hit in the back of the neck and fainted. Xie Xiaoman's figure flashed out like a ghost. Seeing the scene in front of her, she couldn't help but be startled. Xie Xiaoman searched for half the night. She had never thought that the government's Song City could be a hiding place. She only remembered that when she went to Yang Mingxing's house and asked him to help find the whereabouts of the assassin who assassinated Empress Wu, he had instructed Luoyang Commandant Tang Zong that Song City and some of the government's unused places could also be hiding places for criminals. Coincidentally, when Xie Xiaoman climbed into Song City, Duoduo happened to be rushing back to the cellar with hot water. Xie Xiaoman followed behind her and sneaked in. Seeing the scene in front of her, Xie Xiaoman was at a loss. Yang Fan carefully put the child in his arms and said, "I found them here." This woman had just given birth. Perhaps it was a difficult birth, and there was no midwife to help her. She used a knife to cut open her stomach and took out her child. The cellar was very spacious, so Yang Fan's voice was a little hollow, with a hint of coldness. Yang Fan put the child in his arms and tried his best to arrange a position for him to lie down more comfortably. He continued, I asked her. Before she died, she said that she was the woman of General Heiji Changji, and this child was the son of General Heiji Changji. Yang Fan tightened his belt and slowly stood up with his saber in hand. He stared at Xie Xiaoman and said, General Wu Yi probably told you the same reason as I did, right? I believe her when she says that they are Turkic spies. Xie Xiaoman came to her senses and asked Yang Fan, What do you want to do? Yang Fan stared at her for a long time before a helpless smile appeared on his lips. Xiaoman, do you still remember that night at the Dragon Gate? That day, because of the death of Crown Prince Zhang Huai's 2 sons, you were drinking in the tree. You asked me if I could remain indifferent if I was the one who experienced it. I said I could because it is my duty. Even if I don't do it, someone else will. Yang Fan's eyes shone brightly as he stared into Xie Xiaoman's eyes. He said seriously, I didn't lie to you. Really, that was what I thought at the time. But when I really experienced it myself, I realized that sometimes people don't follow their logic. People who always follow their logic are not human. The child in his arms suddenly burst into tears again. His cries echoed in the empty cellar. Yang Fan gently patted him and turned to look at the bloody corpse on the ground. Her eyes were still open. Yang Fan held his saber horizontally in front of his chest. His fingertips gently stroked the blade inch by inch. His eyes also flashed with a sharp light. I thought that I could do anything for myself, but in the end I can't do it. I have to save him. Xiaoman was a little sad. When Yang Fan pointed his saber at her, she suddenly realized that she really thought of him as her own family. Xiaoman had never invested a shred of emotion in the opposite sex, but she didn't know when it started. But Yang Fan's figure gradually entered her heart. Although he was far from being able to shake the position of elder brother in her heart, he was the only person after elder brother that she wanted to be close to. And at this moment he was pointing his saber at her. Xiaoman wanted to ask him, If I don't let you go, will you really kill me? But she didn't ask. She saw the child in Yang Fan's arms, shaking his head slightly, as if he was still looking for a nipple. She suddenly wanted to cry. She thought of her mother. When her mother was dying, the only person she couldn't bear to part with was her. That was her mother's only concern before she died. Her mother entrusted her to her elder brother before she died. It was so similar to the current situation. Although she really wanted to know if Yang Fan would turn against her for this child, she couldn't ask because there was a great mother next to her. Xiaoman slowly took a step back and put away the saber in her hand. She suppressed the waves in her heart and said in a calm tone, Do you need my help? Yang Fan looked at her. A warm smile slowly appeared at the corner of Xiaoman's mouth. She said softly, "Wu Huing can fall to his death. Of course, Xie Xiaoman can also never appear here." The night was dark and the sky was faintly white, but it had not yet released the first rays of dawn. Yang Fan, Xie Xiaoman, and Duo Duo walked out of the grain cellar with the child. After Duo Duo woke up, Yang Fan told her what had happened. Everything at the scene was enough to prove it to Yang Fan. Duo Duo could only cry. A Lang was dead. Her wife was dead. She was like a helpless child. She didn't know what to do. In the end, she could only listen to Yang Fan's arrangements and follow them out. "Is it appropriate for her to be buried here?" Xie Xiaoman asked Yang Fan softly. Yang Fan said, "Right now we really can't take one. Let's bury it here first. I'll find a way to move it later. Just remember the location of this cellar first." His eyes were fixed on the top of the door frame of the cellar. There was a big red 7 character. This was the 7th cellar. Yang Fan said to Duo Duo, "This is the 7th cellar. Remember it." Duo Duo wiped her tears and nodded. The child wriggled in Yang Fan's arms. Yang Fan gently patted his butt and said, "Let's call the little guy Xiao Qi. Duo Duo, I'll arrange a place for you to stay with Xiao Qi. I'll think of a way to redress the grievances with Digong later. Let's go." Duo Duo was dressed like an old soldier and looked like a thin soldier. With the help of Yang Fan and Xie Xiaoman, Duo Duo easily followed them over the high wall and walked on the dark street before dawn. Along the way, they encountered 3 groups of Marquis Wu patrolling at night, but they were all blown away by Yang Fan. Later, they encountered 2 Imperial guards, but Xie Xiaoman appeared and led them away. Yang Fan led Duo Duo to his house in Yanfu Lane near Nan City and used the Imperial Guard's waist tag to open the door. Yang Fan brought Duo Duo and the child into the house and found a room with a well-prepared bed and mattress. He then boiled the water from the well and gave the child a bath. The child was clean after the bath. His white and tender skin was very cute. Neither of them knew how to wrap the baby. Yang Fan took out some soft cloth and tore it open. The 2 of them hastily wrapped the baby up. The newborn baby didn't have enough energy and fell asleep after being tossed around by them. Duo Duo held the child and asked Yang Fan with a pair of frightened eyes, "Brother Yang, what should I do now?" "The child needs to eat." Yang Fan frowned and thought for a long time, then sighed and said, "I can't hire a nanny for him. You stay here first. This house is big enough. Even if the child cries, you don't have to worry about the neighbors hearing. But when I leave in a while, I will lock the door. You must not go out." He thought for a moment and said, "Later I will go to Nan City to buy some rice and vegetables. You?" "Oh yes, I will try to buy some cooked food for you and send it back every 2 days. However, the child must eat some hot porridge. You must be careful to cook at night and not let people see the smoke." Duo Duo was at a loss and could only rely on him now. She could only nod repeatedly and remember every word he said. Yang Fan said again, "I'm afraid the child can't always eat rice porridge. How about this? I will buy a milk goat from Nan City." At that time, the most popular drink in the Tang dynasty was dairy products. Among the various dairy products, cow's milk and horse's milk were not much. Sheep's milk was the mainstream, so it was easy to buy milk goats on the market. The house that Xue Huai gave him was filled with flowers and plants. Now, it could only be used as a pasture. Duo Duo listened to everything Yang Fan said and nodded vigorously. This girl had been scared silly by the series of unforeseen events. Now, she regarded Yang Fan as her only support, her backbone. Naturally, she would listen to him. Yang Fan told her everything he could think of and finally said, "Is it this bag?" The bag was placed on the edge of the bed, and there were some bloodstains on it. Duo Duo nodded and couldn't help but cry again when she thought of her dead wife. Yang Fan took the bundle in his hand and said, "Good, I will take this with me. Since it was Wu Yi who sent us, Then it must be the Wu clan who dealt with General Blacktooth Changji. Grandpa D and the Wu clan don't get along and had thought of rescuing General Blacktooth, but he was too late. I will find a way to send this evidence to Grandpa D. Benefactor, Brother Yang. Duodwa's gratitude was hard to express. She suddenly bent her knees and knelt on the ground with a thud. She hugged the child and kowtowed heavily to him. Yang Fan quickly helped her up and said, "What are you doing? Get up quickly. Don't worry. Everyone here knows that this is Master Shue's house and doesn't know that it has been transferred to me. No one will dare to break in. You can live here in peace. It's getting late, so I have to leave first. I'll visit you in the afternoon." Yang Fan hurriedly left. When he locked the door and walked to the crossroads, the bell above the heavenly gate began to ring. Chapter 197. When the bell on the gate of heaven rang, the bells and drums throughout the city rang in unison, forming a majestic symphony that reverberated in the sky above Luoyang. Yang Fan did not return to the palace, but instead headed towards Di Renjia's home in the southern part of the city. He welcomed the rising sun, accompanied by the sound of the drums, and his emotions surged. There were many things that one would not be able to understand if they had not seen it with their own eyes or experienced it for themselves. The scene from last night had deeply touched Yang Fan's heart. He wanted to do something for others, not because of himself, not because of his family, not because of his friends, only because of justice and conscience. He had thought that everything he had experienced had completely cooled his blood, and that everything that had nothing to do with him would not affect his feelings. Only at this moment did he realize that it was not the case. He could not be cold-blooded and heartless, and he could not be completely void of worldly desires. Even if that person's misfortune had nothing to do with him, they had one thing in common, and that was human nature. What was human nature? Miao Shinka said. Human nature was something uglier than beasts. Perhaps the desires and feelings of humans were more complicated than beasts, and there would be some people who were crueler than beasts for their own benefits. However, humans were not humans because of these beasts in human skin. If they were the standard to distinguish humans from beasts, then humans were the cruelest of beasts. Humans were humans because of their human nature and love. Yang Fan believed that Di Renjia was a trustworthy person, not only because of Di Renjia's usual reputation, but also because he knew that Di Renjia was incompatible with the Wu clan in this short period of time. He knew that Di Renjia sympathized with Blacktooth Changji's misfortune and wanted to save this great general. The people who persecuted Blacktooth Changji were undoubtedly the Wu clan's party. This powerful force was not something he could deal with. He was willing to face it, but it did not mean that he had to do a hopeless battle like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. He needed an important official of the imperial court, like Di Renjia. In the Di residence, the Luoyang prefecture had sent over the investigation of Miao Shinka's case early in the morning. Di Renjia was already sitting in the study. Hearing Shu Ashing's report, he waved his hand and said, "Leave it there." After Blacktooth Tsuneyoki's death, the position of great general that he had vacated was bound to cause a fight. The people who were most likely to succeed were the ones who framed Blacktooth Tsuneyoki. They were the most well-prepared, and if they didn't have a certain degree of confidence in seizing this power, there was no need for them to deal with Blacktooth Tsuneyoki. In this way, it would be even more difficult for Di Renjia to turn the tide and take back the military authority. He had to use all the forces he could, not just those who were anti-martial, neutral, and hidden in the court. Even the conflicts between the different factions of the Wu clan had to be fully exploited in order to have a chance of success. If that was the case, he needed to first confirm who it was that coveted Blacktooth Everlasting's position of great general. Was it Wu Sanxi or Wu Qingxi? As for the death of Miao Shinka, it was not even worth mentioning compared to this matter. Even though this matter was personally ordered by Empress Wu, he did not have the leisure to care about it. Wait a minute. Shu Asheng gently put down the documents sent by the Luoyang prefecture. Just as he was about to leave, Di Renjia suddenly called out to him. He handed over the things he had just written in his hand and ordered, "Send these invitations as soon as possible. This old man wants to invite Princess Taiping and the Prime Ministers back. Also, if Shen Mu comes, bring him to see me." Shu Ashang complied and took the invitations that Di Renjia had personally written and left. Di Renjia slowly stood up and paced around the room. He clenched his right hand into a fist and repeatedly knocked it on his left palm. He was repeatedly thinking about who would benefit more from Blacktooth Tsuneyoki's death. Although he only needed to wait patiently for the murderer to surface in order to fight for the military authority, it would be too late to act by then. Ah Lang! Di Renjia was pulling his beard strand by strand in deep thought when Shu Ashing suddenly stepped into the door. Di Renjia's eyes lit up and he asked, "Is it Shen Mu?" Shu Ashing said, "Alang, not Shen Mu. It is Yang Fan who accompanied Alang to investigate the case yesterday. He said that he has a confidential matter to discuss with Alang." Di Renjia was startled and asked curiously, "Yang Fan? Why is he here so early in the morning? Quickly bring him to see me." Shu Ashing agreed and turned to leave. As he walked, he said, "Yes, this person is really strange. There's a door, but he didn't use it. He actually climbed over the wall. It made me think that a thief had broken in broad daylight. Wait." Di Renjia's eyes sharpened. "You said he climbed over the wall." Shu Ashing said yes. Di Renjia thought for a moment and asked, "Where is he?" "He's in the western courtyard," Shu Ashing replied. "He came from the woods outside the courtyard. If Xiao Rin did not go to the western courtyard to look for the gilded invitation, I would not have found him. I told him to wait there. I'll ask Alang if he wants to see him." Di Renjia's eyes slightly flashed. "I see. Don't bring him here. This old man will go see him. Does anyone else know that he broke into the residence?" Shu Ashing said no. This old man thought that with his status, there is no reason for him to be a thief. So I did not send anyone to watch. Di Renjia said, "Well done. Don't let others know about this matter. Let's go. Bring this old man to see him immediately." Di Renjia's legs have not yet recovered, but they are already 70 to 80% healed. It is not a big problem to walk without exerting too much strength. He let Shu Ashing lead him to the west courtyard. Chan Wan was holding a bowl of hot cheese when she saw Di Renjia following Shu Ashing sneakily. She could not help but call out, "Ah Lang, the cheese is here." Di Renjia waved his hand and put a finger to his lips to make a silent gesture. Then he slipped away with Shu Ashing. Chan Wan was puzzled and said to herself, "This old man, what is he busy with now?" At this time the residence's steward came and saw Chan Wan standing there with a bowl in her hand. He said, "Miss Chan Wan, Shen Mu came to visit Alang. Is Alang in the study?" "He is here?" Chan Wan's eyes lit up. She quickly said, "Invite him to the study. Alang will see him in a while." The steward responded with a smile and turned to leave. Chan Wan looked at the hot cheese in her hand and wrinkled her nose. She said, "Strange old man, if you don't want to drink, then forget it. If you don't want to drink, give it to my third brother." In the west courtyard, Yang Fan saw Di Renjia and solemnly said, "Uncle, this nephew took the liberty to visit because I have an important matter to inform Uncle." Di Renjia said, "Is there any important clue about Miao Shinka's case?" Yang Fan said, "No, this nephew has a grievance regarding Great General He Chi Changji. After thinking about it, the entire imperial court can only ask Uncle for help." Yang Fan did not say anything and directly took the bag. Di Renjia's eyes narrowed. He said, "This is—" Yang Fan said, "Uncle, please take a look first." Di Renjia took the bundle and opened it. Inside were many letters, official letters, and military documents. There were even some thick name lists. Di Renjia only flipped through a few things before his expression changed. "Nephew, where did you get these things from?" Yang Fan said, "Does Uncle think that these things can be used as evidence?" Di Renjia said, "What evidence?" Yang Fan said, "To clear Great General He Chi Changji's name and find evidence of the mastermind behind the murder of the great general." Di Renjia narrowed his old eyes and carefully looked at Yang Fan for a long time. He lightly waved his hand and said to Shu Ashing, "Ashing, go outside and keep watch. Don't let anyone come near." "Yes." Shu Ashang flashed outside. Di Renjia stared at Yang Fan and said in a deep voice, "What is your relationship with He Chi Changji?" Yang Fan said, "We don't know each other." Di Renjia said, "You should know that He Chi Changji was the current Duke of the dynasty, a great general at the border. Even so, he died in such a dubious way. This bag is enough to take your life. Even if you die, you won't be able to cause any trouble. You are just a soldier. There is no need for you to stand up for others." Yang Fan said, "Someone has to stand up. Don't you think so, Uncle Di?" Di Renjia stared at him for a long time. His eyes gradually revealed a gratified expression, and he lightly nodded. "I am not alone." Yang Fan naturally understood the sentence and couldn't help but be overjoyed. "Uncle, you agree to intervene?" Di Renjia said, "Since this old man knows about this, I will naturally intervene, but not now." Yang Fan was startled and slightly angered. "Why is that?" Di Renjia shook his head. "Child, it is not enough to be hot-blooded. You must pay attention to strategy. From this evidence, He Chi Changji was framed by Wu Qingxi, Qiu Shenji, and Zhou Xing. If General He Chi Changji is not dead, this old man will immediately bring this bag to the palace to see the Empress. The Empress will definitely pardon him and use a very dignified method to clear his name and give him justice. At the same time, it will also prove that the imperial court is clear." But Di Renjia stared at Yang Fan. "He Chi Changji is dead. A duke, a great general who has been guarding the border for many years, has died inexplicably. If he is to be pardoned, someone must be responsible. Who will be responsible? A dead Blacktooth Changji was useless, but those who framed Blacktooth Changji were still of great use to the Empress. What do you think the result will be?" Yang Fan couldn't help but ask, "What will be the result?" Di Renjia said, "The result will be a stone sinking into the sea. This case will continue to be wrong, and the person who framed General He Chi Changji may be summoned by the Empress to be scolded, but he will still be used." Yang Fan could only feel the veins on his forehead throbbing a few times. He gritted his teeth. "Then this case is just going to end like this?" Di Renjia lightly shook his head and slowly paced around the room. His eyes habitually narrowed. Poison can sometimes kill people, and sometimes it can also save people. It all depends on when and where you use it. The same piece of evidence can sometimes lead to death, and sometimes it can let him off the hook. He stood still and slowly turned around to look at Yang Fan. He said in a low voice, "To let it play its proper role, we need the right time. If you believe this old man, then leave it here. This old man promises you that this evidence will appear when you can bring the villain to justice." Chapter 198. If Master D is still untrustworthy, then there will be no good people left in the court. Yang Fan bowed deeply and said, "My knowledge is shallow. I will follow your arrangements." Di Renjia nodded. Yang Fan was his son's good friend and had saved his life, so Di Renjia had always been close to him. Now that he knew that they were like-minded, he became even more friendly. He simply asked Yang Fan about how he obtained the evidence, and when he heard about the cesarean section, he couldn't help but be moved. After sighing, Di Renjia said, "Nephew has done very well and is very meticulous. Since that Miss Duo said that she asked the Yamen runners from the Ministry of Justice about my residence yesterday, and they could not catch me, it is inevitable that they would arrange people outside my house. You should sneak in through the forest and leave through the forest." Yang Fan said, "Nephew has the same intention. Nephew still has some things to arrange and will leave these things to uncle." Nephew will take his leave. Di Renja nodded in agreement and watched as Yang Fan left. He called out, Ashung. Shu Ashung answered and entered. Di Renja said, Keep this bag carefully. Shu Ashung walked over to organize the bag, and Di Renja walked back to the study. Now that he knew that the real mastermind behind Blacktooth Changji was Wu Qingxi, it was easy to handle. He only needed to subtly reveal this information to Wu Sanxi, and he would jump out to cause trouble for Wu Qingxi. However, Empress Wu's ascension to the throne was currently the most important matter in the imperial court. Everything else had to give way to this matter. Now that they had presented the evidence of their crimes, Empress Wu would definitely reduce the matter to a small one for the sake of stability. Similarly, the battle between Wu Sanxi and Wu Qingxi would not be too intense. They would definitely work together to ensure that Empress Wu ascended to the throne. He had to ensure that Longyou's military power did not fall into Wu Qingxi's hands, and he had to rely on other forces, such as Princess Taiping and Shenmu. When Di Renja walked into the study, he saw Shenmu sitting there eating hot cheese. The beautiful little girl with bright eyes and white teeth snuggled up to his side, smiling sweetly as she said something. The two of them looked extremely intimate. Di Renja coughed and walked in. Lady Chanwan had a pretty appearance. Even though she was dressed as a maid and did not dress up too much, it could not hide her extraordinary beauty. It was said that she was originally a famous courtesan in Chang. Later on, she was bought by Shenmu and sent to his side to serve him as a maid. Di Renja only vaguely knew about it and did not inquire about it in detail. He also knew that this Lady Chanwan was the person that Shenmu had left by his side to be in charge of contacting and communicating with. He had never really treated her as his maidservant. Ah Lang. Seeing Di Renja come in, Chanwan hurriedly curtsied. Di Renja said, Okay, go out for a while and guard the door. I have something to discuss with Shenmu. Yes. Chanwan's pair of beautiful eyes looked at Shenmu's face, and then she retreated. Shenmu put down the small porcelain bowl and stood up. Master Di Renja waved his hand and said, Sit down. I have something to discuss with you. After the time it takes for a joss stick to burn, the study room quietened down. Di Renja sat behind the desk, stroking his beard and frowning slightly. Shenmu sat beside him, and his eyes were in a daze. After a long time, Shenmu slowly said, If you want to ensure that you do not lose your military power, I will encourage young Master Jiang to take action in the imperial court and let some ministers support you. Of course, it will still depend on you, Master Di. As for me, I can think of a way to create a conflict at the river source. In this way, Lu Shirda, the deputy envoy, will temporarily take over the position of ambassador and command the 3 armies. Once General Lu temporarily takes over He Qichang Ji's military position and has made military achievements, it will not be easy to remove him from the position of ambassador. In addition to the efforts of the imperial court, I'm afraid Wu Qingxi's efforts will be in vain. Di Renja frowned and said, You want to create a conflict? Won't there be casualties? Shenmu sneered. Master Di, do you have a foolproof plan? The Tubo and Turkic Khaganate will invade the borders whenever they have the chance. Do you think they will not launch another attack on Longyu after knowing that their archenemy He Qichangji is dead? If I'm not wrong, I'm afraid they are already planning to cooperate. Provoking a conflict in advance and winning a great battle will only bring benefits to the Tang dynasty. If you want to achieve great things, don't bother about trifles. If you are such a soft-hearted person who wants perfection in everything, why don't you shave your hair and become a monk who doesn't care about anything? When blood flows like a river outside, you only need to chant Amit Ba twice and your conscience will be at ease. Di Renja heaved a sigh. Shenmu continued, If we wait until they have completed their plan and are fully prepared, the 2 sides will join forces and attack again. If the imperial court were to send a muddle-headed and incompetent general, that would truly be the end of the trend. At that time, I'm afraid the losses would be more than 10 times what we have now. Di Renjie gritted his teeth and nodded heavily. He said in a deep voice, "All right, go and do it. We will coordinate from the inside and outside to ensure that Longyo's military power does not fall into the hands of the Wu family." Shinmu said, "All right, I will arrange it immediately. I have almost settled the matters in Luoyang. In a few days, I will personally go to Longyu." Di Renjie asked curiously, "What are you going to do?" Shinmu said, "Master Di, how much do you think I will have to pay to provoke a conflict, restrain the Turkic Khaganate, prevent the conflict from expanding, and ensure that Lu Shurta's side wins? I don't know how many of the arrangements I have made in Longyu will be destroyed because of this battle. How can I not go?" Yang Fan left the Di residence and wandered around the city for a while. After making sure that no one was following him, he went to Nan City. At this time, Nan City had just opened for business. Yang Fan casually ate something in the shop and went to buy a set of casual clothes to change into. He then bought a wheelbarrow. He bought a few sets of women's clothes and some daily necessities. He also bought some rice, flour, oil, and salt. He thought that Duo might be able to endure not eating for a day, but it would be troublesome for the child, so he bought a lot of high-quality charcoal. In the end, Yang Fan chose a milk goat. Other than the goat, the rest of the things were placed on the wheelbarrow. He turned into Yanfu workshop like a hawker on the street. Yang Fan wandered around the workshop casually and arrived at the side door of his house. While there was no one around, he opened the corner door and entered the courtyard. Yang Fan sent food and clothes to Duo. Seeing that the child was crying from hunger, he quickly asked Duo to milk some goat's milk. He then lit some high-quality charcoal that did not like to emit smoke. Duo was a woman from the border, so she was very skilled at milking cows. After a while, she squeezed out a bowl of goat's milk and boiled it in the charcoal pot. After warming it up, she fed it to the extremely hungry Xiaoqi. The little guy finally had a mouthful of milk, so how could he be picky? He swallowed it in big mouthfuls and enjoyed it very much. The little guy was simple-minded and sensible. After eating his fill, he stopped crying and closed his eyes to sleep. Yang Fan looked at the relieved Duo and said to her, "All right, you should eat something too. You've been hungry for a long time." "Okay." Duo agreed, but she did not leave. Suddenly, her beautiful big eyes flashed as she looked at Yang Fan. Yang Fan asked, "What's the matter? Is there anything else?" Duo stammered. "That matter," Yang Fan said. "Oh, I've already handed it over to an official. It's just that the people who framed Blacktooth General Changji are now in hot demand. They can't make a move now. They have to wait for 2 hours." "Oh." Duo's eyes darkened and she was slightly disappointed. Seeing that she was still not leaving, Yang Fan asked again, "What else is there?" Duo bit her lip and asked again, "What about me and the young master?" Yang Fan said, "You can live here in peace. No one will disturb you. One day, the injustice of Blacktooth General Changji will be cleared, and his young master will also be rewarded by the imperial court." Duo wanted to say something, but hesitated. She said timidly, then, "I'm going to eat." Yang Fan nodded and watched her walk out. He then lowered his head to look at the child sleeping soundly and let out a soft sigh. In the evening, Yang Fan rushed back to the palace. He thought that he was the last one to return, but when he arrived at the Black Tortoise Gate, he found out that there were still more than 1,000 cavalry guards who had yet to report back. It seemed that the position of brigade commander was really attractive. Wu Yi was very annoyed. Ever since the internal guards found nothing at the rented place of the 2 Turkic women, they had completely lost all news of them. The people he sent to the outskirts of Di Renjie's mansion also did not find any news of the 2 Turkic women. In the afternoon, Di Renjie actually leisurely went out to the Golden Hairpin drunkenness to entertain Princess Taiping and several prime ministers. It seemed that he knew nothing about this matter, now that the internal guards and the 100 cavalry guards had returned one after another. There was still no trace of the 2 women. Could they still fly to the sky? Because he was in a bad mood, Wu Yi did not speak too warmly to Yang Fan, who was his little uncle. He asked a few simple questions and let him go back to rest. Wu Yi continued to wait for news on the city gate tower. Yang Fan returned to the dormitory, took a bath, and changed his clothes. He went to have dinner and continued to exercise in the Geocity area to relax. When the sky turned dark, he wanted to go back to rest. He had been busy all night yesterday and had not slept yet. Unexpectedly, when he returned to the front of the barracks, he saw Xie Xiaoman waiting for him there. In the early morning, Xie Xiaoman pretended to find something and ran away to distract the 2 imperial guards who were searching for him. She acted as a cover for him. It was not until now that they met again. Xie Xiaoman didn't say anything. She only glanced sideways with her big, expressive eyes, and Yang Fan followed her away. "Come, sit down. I have something to talk to you." As Xie Xiaoman spoke, she sat down on one of the stone dumbbells in the martial arts arena. Perhaps it was because the 2 of them knew each other's secrets, but the way she spoke became even more intimate. Yang Fan stretched out his leg and hooked a stone dumbbell in front of him. He also sat down naturally. This stone dumbbell weighed 120 kilograms. It was the heaviest stone dumbbell in the entire martial arts practice field. With a light hook of his foot, he lifted it as if it was weightless. Xie Xiaoman's pupils shrank as she saw this. Chapter 199. Yang Fan sat down on the stone dumbbell, not noticing that there was anything wrong with his actions just now. Perhaps in his subconscious mind, he had already completely trusted Xie Xiaoman and was no longer vigilant against her, so he was completely unguarded. Xiaoman noticed Yang Fan's strength in lifting heavy things as if they were light, but she re-evaluated his skills and didn't think too much about it. She had previously known that Yang Fan could win 2nd place in the sumo wrestling competition with skills slightly inferior to Chu Kuanga's, so his martial arts and skills couldn't be too weak. Now, she just looked at him in a higher light. Her attention was actually on, "How is that child?" As soon as Yang Fan sat down, Xiaoman hurriedly gathered up the corners of her clothes, leaned forward, and asked excitedly. Yang Fan said, "That little guy is really good. After eating, he buries his head in a deep sleep. He doesn't cause any trouble at all." Xiaoman said, "He's so young, what can he eat? Won't he be hungry?" Yang Fan said, "Goat's milk. I can't hire a nanny for him, it's too unsafe. At night, Duo will also cook some rice porridge and make it mushy for him to eat. This little guy is very sturdy, he should be able to eat it." Xiaoman's big eyes suddenly flashed, and she asked again, "Does he have clothes to wear? Will he freeze?" Yang Fan said, "Clothes. I wrapped him up with some soft cloth. It's almost summer now, he shouldn't freeze." "Yes, that's true." Xiaoman tilted her head and thought about it, then asked faintly, "Will he miss his mother?" When she asked this, Xiaoman's eyes were sparkling, as if there was a layer of water flowing in them. Yang Fan was speechless for a long time, then said in frustration, "Right now, he probably doesn't know anything." Oh, Xiaoman also seemed to realize that her question was a little stupid. She smiled embarrassedly and fell silent. The moon gradually rose, and the 2 were still talking. During this time, Yang Fan had secretly yawned several times, but Buchi was in the mood to talk, so he had to accompany her. They first talked about the child who had lost his mother, what he ate, what he wore, whether Duo could take care of him, and what would happen to him in the future. Unconsciously, they talked about Wu Yui, who had sent them to kill Chen Nir. They talked about the Wu family. They talked a lot, but consciously avoided one topic, the child's mother. Xiaoman raised her face and looked at the moon that had just risen in the sky. She sighed faintly and said, "I walked around the city for half a day and didn't come back until noon. It wasn't because I thought it was still early, but because I didn't dare to come back. My face must have been very ugly. Whenever I think of that woman, my heart aches. Whenever I thought of her, I would think of my mother who loved me dearly. My heart would ache. When I came back, I had to pretend to be calm and smile when I saw my companions coming back. who would know how uncomfortable my heart was. I only felt a little better after talking with you for so long. Yang Fan held back a yawn and said with tears in his eyes, "Who said it wasn't? When you smiled when you were young, you really smiled. You smiled because you were happy. When you grow up, there are very few times when you genuinely smile. Most of the time it's just an expression that's faked." Xiao Man said resentfully, "I don't understand. Why are they so cruel? The Empress is already so old. She clearly has more power than the Emperor, but in order to wear a dragon robe and be called the Emperor, she can even kill her own children, even her own grandson. General Blacktooth Chang Ji guards the border and has outstanding achievements. Is there any sign of rebellion? He's already 60 years old. How many years can he live? What kind of rebellion can there be? Crown Prince Li Hong, Crown Prince Li Xian, all because there are signs of rebellion. Even the imperial grandson, who's only a few years old, is because there are signs of rebellion. Why are there so many people who want to rebel?" Yang Fan said, "If you want to incriminate someone, you can always find a pretext. In the end, it's just a matter of desire. Those who don't have money want money. Those who don't have power want power. And those who have power and money want to be famous for eternity. This is still a smart person who knows that immortality is impossible. Otherwise, it would be even more." Xiao Man said, "Yes. Some people have black eyes and red hearts, but once their eyes are red, their hearts are black. Their power and wealth are much greater than ours. Why don't they know how to be content?" Xiao Man raised her face. The moon had already climbed over the treetops. Xiao Man looked at the moon and said with fascination, "Like me, I never think so much. What I want is actually very, very little. I just want to find." Yang Fan yawned again and said with tears in his eyes, "Big sister, I can't take it anymore. I really have to sleep. Do you want to sleep with me? Get lost. You get sleepy when I talk about serious things." Xiao Man, who was expressing her emotions, glared at him hatefully. She stood up and patted her, but saying, "I'm also sleepy. Then I'll go back to sleep." Yang Fan hurriedly stood up and said, "And rest well. I didn't sleep well last night." Xiao Man walked a few steps and suddenly stopped. She turned her head and said, "I want to see that little guy. Can I?" Yang Fan thought for a moment and said, "Of course you can. But try to be careful. You can't leave any traces." "Of course. Then can I go tomorrow?" "Tomorrow?" "Yes. I don't always have the chance to leave the palace. The great general hasn't given up and will search again tomorrow. We can—" Yang Fan thought for a moment and reluctantly nodded. "Okay, let's go together tomorrow. Be careful." Early the next morning, when Yang Fan and Xiao Man appeared at the black tortoise gate tower, Wu Yui looked at them in surprise. "You too, why are you dressed like this?" Both of them had changed into casual clothes. Xiao Man was wearing a green cotton skirt. Her hair was combed into the double circle makeup of an unmarried girl. She had bright eyes and white teeth. She looked like a pretty little village girl. Yang Fan was also wearing a short cotton shirt. The two of them, standing there, looked like a pair of brother and sister. Yang Fan said, "General, we searched so loudly yesterday and still couldn't find them. Maybe someone came to their aid. There are millions of people in Luoyang. It won't be easy to find them if they hide in a crowd. Xiedue and I thought we should change into casual clothes. It will be easier to find their traces this way. The two of us walking together, a man and a woman, won't attract attention." Wu Yui nodded repeatedly and said with a face full of smiles, "Good, very good. This is a good idea. You are still the ones who think of ways to do things." He glared at the inner guards and 100 cavalry soldiers and ordered, "Look at you! You were seen from 8 zhang away. How can you not run away? Go back and change into casual clothes. One man and one woman will search together. Go quickly." All the guards responded in unison and retreated out of the room. Yang Fan took the chance to say, "General, we will leave first." "Okay, go." When the two of them also left, Wu Yi let out a long breath and said to Su Liang, "The 100 Cavalry is responsible for the safety of the Forbidden Palace. The inner guards are responsible for the Empress' personal guards. Sometimes they leave the palace to eliminate some unsuitable old fellows. They are all famous people with status. It will be easy to find them as long as they are skilled and clean. It is too difficult for them to do this kind of thing. They should all be transferred to the Luoyang Prefecture to learn how to investigate people and solve cases from the officials there." Su Liang smiled and said, "General, please calm down. After all, this kind of thing only happens once in a few years." Wu Yi glared at him and snorted heavily. Yang Fan and Xia Xiaoman walked side by side to the black tortoise gate. When the guard saw the two of them, he quickly greeted Xia Xiaoman. "Good morning, Xia Duwei." He then greeted Yang Fan. "Oh, I finally see you. Yang Heir, when I was on duty yesterday morning, a soldier of the Dragon Force Guard named Ma Qiao came by and entrusted me with a message for you. He wants you to return to the Showen workshop if you have time in the next 2 days. Look, I forgot about it last night." "Ma Qiao?" Yang Fan was startled. This message did not sound like it was urgent. Why did Ma Qiao want him to go to the workshop? He was also in the army. Did he have time to stay at home all day? Did he cause some trouble and get kicked out of the army? Yang Fan pondered, thanked the guard, and left the palace with Xia Xiaoman. The two of them came out early. The other guards had gone back to change their clothes. The two of them did not have to worry about being followed, so they directly crossed the Tianjin Bridge and rushed to the southern city. The two of them crossed the Tianjin Bridge and first turned into Tiangong Temple. They wandered around inside and left through the side door, passing through the streets and alleys before rushing to Yanfu Square. Along the way, the two of them bought some cooked and hot food from various shops. When they arrived at Yang Fan's house in Yanfu Square, they sneaked in through a secluded corner door. The child would wake up from time to time at night. From time to time, he needed to change his diaper and feed him some food. Duo did not sleep well the first night. After such a toss and turn, she was a little tired. When the two of them arrived, she had just coaxed the child to sleep. The child was lying on the Kong bed, dozing off with disheveled hair. Seeing the two of them arrive, Duo hurriedly got up again. Xiaoman originally wanted to come and see the child because she was worried about the child, but when she saw that she had disturbed the child's rest, she felt a little embarrassed. Yang Fan said to Duo, "Miss Duo, you're a girl. It's really hard for you to take care of this child, but your identity is special. There are people still looking for you, so you really have to be careful. You can't hire someone to help you." Duo's eyes were a little red and swollen from sleep. After hearing Yang Fan's words, she quickly said, "It's okay. It's just taking care of a child. How tired can it be? I have nothing else to do here, so I have plenty of time to rest. It's just because I didn't sleep the night before and woke up a few times last night that I'm a little tired. When the child falls asleep, I'll also catch up on my sleep." Yang Fan handed over the wontons and biscuits he had bought and said, "I just bought them. Go eat something while it's hot and wash up. We'll take care of the child first." Duo agreed gratefully and took the food to the outer room. Yang Fan and Xiaoman sat on the edge of the bed and bent down to look at Xiaoqi, who was sleeping sweetly in the swaddling clothes. The morning sun shone gently on them through the window lattice. The scene was like a pair of young parents watching their child attentively. It was extremely warm. Chapter 200. His fingers are so small, so thin. I don't even dare to touch them. I'm afraid they will break if I touch them. Look, his eyelashes are so beautiful. Xiaoman's usually fierce and proud demeanor was completely gone. She looked with curiosity at the little guy lying there and commented on him. There was never a time when she did not find it interesting. She had rarely seen such a small child, and it was the first time she was able to observe him so closely. Is he a boy or a girl? Xiaoman's mouth did not stop. After chattering for a while, she suddenly asked, Yang Fan couldn't help but laugh. Won't you know when you see for yourself? Xiao Man rolled her eyes at him and ignored his crazy words. She lowered her head and carefully reached out a finger to lightly touch Xiao Qi's palm. Feeling the warm and tender little hand, she smiled happily. The two stayed here for more than an hour. Yang Fan bid farewell to Duo. Xiao Man reluctantly followed Yang Fan out of the mansion through the corner door. She asked, "Where are we going now?" Yang Fan said, "We have to walk around. I'll take you to Xiaowen Workshop, to where I live." Okay. Xiao Man happily agreed and followed Yang Fan to Xiaowen Workshop. The Xiaowen Workshop had passed its busiest time in the morning. The pace of life in the neighborhood had slowed down again. The bare-chested Hu cook had just suppressed the fire and was slowly flipping through the baked bread in the pot. Jiaodong's master Meng folded 2 rolls of fine white cloth that had already turned yellow and gently covered the steamer to prevent the steam from escaping. After recognizing Yang Fan, they all greeted Yang Fan in pleasant surprise. Old Yuchi, who was baking the baked bread, threw down the bamboo tongs. As he wiped his hands on his apron, he came over with a smile. Curling his long beard, he laughed and said, "It is rare that Erling has the time to visit the workshop. Who is this girl?" Old Yuchi looked at Xiao Man and nodded in satisfaction. Then he looked at Yang Fan, and his smile became slightly warm. Master Meng stood behind the stove and gave Yang Fan a thumbs up. Yang Fan smiled. He knew that their rich imagination was only limited to the matters between men and women. He couldn't explain anything to them in front of Xiao Man, so he just said, "Uncle, you go ahead with your work. I'm going to Brother Chiao, Ari's house, to take a look. We'll talk when I come back." All right. You can go and do your work." Old man Yuchi opened his throat and let out a rough laugh. Of course. You too are good brothers. I knew you came back for Brother Chiao." "Haha. Didn't you bring back a beautiful young lady? You don't want Brother Chiao to be the center of attention, do you? Yo, this Hu old man even knows how to brag. What did he say about focusing on the beauty in front?" As Yang Fan walked, he greeted acquaintances along the way. Xiao Man followed him all the way, facing all kinds of speculations, sudden realization, and ambiguous gazes. She asked Yang Fan with some confusion. Yang Fan smiled and waved at a few acquaintances on the side of the road. He said calmly, "You don't have to pay attention to them. They often say some inexplicable things and do some inexplicable things. You just need to know that they are good people." When he passed by the second intersection of Cross Street, Yang Fan thought he would see Big Sister Noodles, who was wearing a little blue dress and working hard there. Who would have thought that when he reached the intersection, not only did he not see the beautiful figure busy at work, even the small shed had been torn down. Naturally, the panel under the shed and the stove were all gone. Yang Fan was stunned. Why didn't Sister Pasta open her stall? She even tore down her stall. Yang Fan's heart was full of doubts. He really wanted to immediately turn and go to Pasta's house, but after thinking about it, he decided to go to Ma Chiao's house first. If something really happened, he might be able to find out more about it. Yang Fan quickened his pace and rushed to Ma Chiao's house. He pushed open the gate and shouted, Auntie, it's me, Yang Fan." "Xiao Fan?" With a cry of surprise, the door opened and Ma Chiao ran out of the house like a gust of wind. When he saw Yang Fan, he laughed heartily and rushed over to give him a bear hug. Yang Fan immediately felt at ease after being hugged. Looking at Ma Chiao's appearance, it was unlikely that something had happened. It was also unlikely that something had happened to Pasta's house. Otherwise, he wouldn't be smiling so happily when he saw him. Yang Fan patted him on the back and smiled. "Let go. You've only been in the army for a short period of time, but your strength has increased quite a bit. You're going to strangle me to death." Ma Chiao laughed heartily and let go. When he saw Xiao Man, he was startled at first. Just as he was about to tease her with some flowery words, he suddenly recognized Xie Duwei from the palace. He couldn't help but jump in fright. He said in surprise, Xiao Fan, why did you bring Xiedue here? You. Yang Fan said, Xiedue and I disguised ourselves to go out of the palace on an errand. I heard that you were looking for me, so I came along. Quickly invite Xiedue into the house to sit. Oh, yes, yes. Please come in, please come in. Ma Qiao walked into the house with a tentative expression. At the same time he shouted, Auntie, there's a guest. Who's here? Ma's mother came out of the house with a happy face. When she saw Yang Fan, she smiled. It's Xiao Fan. I haven't seen you for a long time. Ma Qiao, this brat, what kind of distinguished guest is this? Isn't he just with his own family? Ma's mother suddenly saw Xiao Man standing behind Yang Fan, and her voice suddenly stopped. She looked at Xiao Man up and down and quickly walked over. She pulled her hand and carefully looked at it. She clicked her tongue and praised. Oh, whose daughter is this? So beautiful you guys are. Ma Qiao squeezed through the door and said, Auntie, why are you asking? Quickly invite them into the house. Come on in and sit down. As he spoke, he pushed his mother away and let them into the house. When Ma's mother saw that Yang Fan had brought back such a beautiful girl, she was interrupted by her son. She couldn't help but poke him hard on the forehead and said in a low voice, You're so troublesome. You're poor all day long. Look at Xiao Fan. I said that a dog that bites doesn't bark. Look at her ability. She brought back a beautiful girl, quietly. Xiao Man's hearing was very good. She clearly heard Ma's mother's deliberately lowered voice. She vaguely guessed why so many people had a strange look in their eyes along the way. She also guessed what Ma's mother had misunderstood. She couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. When she entered the house, she said embarrassedly, Auntie, what are you talking about? Yang Fan said, You see, I've already said that they often say some inexplicable things and do some inexplicable things. You just need to know that they are good people. Don't worry so much. After a while, Ma Qiao came in with a big dustpan and said with a smile, Come on. Have some dates and walnuts. Yang Fan moved his body and let him put the big dustpan between him and Xiao Man. He asked, Brother Qiao, why did you send me a letter to come back? Also, why did Sister Ning's stall close? Ma Qiao suddenly became a little shy. He coughed twice and said, Oh, you mean this? Ahem. This, that, you can listen to my mother later. It was the first time that Yang Fan had seen him show such an expression. He couldn't help but be surprised and said, You also have times when you are embarrassed? Tell me, what is it? Before Yang Fan could grab him, Ma Qiao had already slipped out and shouted, Mother, Xiao Fan is calling you. Yang Fan couldn't help but laugh. What's wrong with this kid? After a while, Ma's mother came in and said with a smile, Xiao Fan, why did you call Auntie? Yang Fan said, Auntie, why did Ma Qiao send a letter to ask me to come back? Ma's mother smiled and said, Good news. Auntie checked the almanac. The 9th of next month is an auspicious day, suitable for holding a happy event. Qiao is about to get married. You are his good brother. When the time comes, you must come back to attend the wedding. Yang Fan said curiously, Brother Qiao is about to get married. Who is the bride? A thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Yang Fan couldn't help but call out, Sister Ning. The noble princess was dressed splendidly, followed by 2 palace maids, walking towards the hall of martial accomplishment. The 2 palace maids behind the noble princess were carrying a carved and elegant flat box. No one knew what was inside. My daughter is here, call her in. Wu Zetian had just finished dealing with the memorials and had just given a few instructions to Shanghai Wanner. Hearing that the noble princess wanted to see her, she said with a smile. The noble princess entered the hall of martial accomplishment. Seeing Empress Wu, she quickly walked forward and curtsied. My daughter greets the Empress. Wu Zetian said, my daughter, how did you find the time to visit me today? The noble princess said respectfully, I obtained a few 100 years old ginseng. Thinking of how the Empress has been working day and night, I quickly sent it to the palace for the Empress to nourish her body. After the noble princess finished speaking, she moved to the side. 2 palace maids carried the wooden box forward, as if they were holding a plaque, and showed it to Empress Wu. The noble princess waited for them to stand still, then quickly moved forward and gently opened the lid of the box. Inside was a black velvet cushion, and on top of it was an old ginseng. This ginseng wasn't a carrot, although it was a few hundred years old. It didn't look thick or long. Instead, its roots were very fine. Although the trunk of the ginseng wasn't big, the long roots spread to every corner of the box. The density of the roots was like a beautiful painting. When Wu Zetian saw this, she couldn't help but praise. It really is a good ginseng. My daughter, it's rare to see your kind intentions. Wu Zetian turned to Wanner and said, Wanner, send someone to bring some of my motherwort face cream and give it to my daughter. Wanner agreed and stepped forward. Just as she was about to give the order, the noble princess suddenly had tears in her eyes. She knelt down in front of Wu Zetian. Wanner was startled and quickly moved to the side to avoid arousing suspicion. The noble princess excitedly said, The Empress really cares for my daughter. She is as kind as a real mother. My daughter has lost her support at a young age. Although she lives a luxurious life, it is difficult for her to enjoy the happiness of being at the feet of her parents. I have a presumptuous request. I would like to kneel before the Empress and recognize the Empress as my mother. I hope the Empress will agree to it. What? Wanner's eyes widened in surprise. She looked at the wrinkled, white-haired, and old noble princess. She was the daughter of a great ancestor. Speaking of which, Empress Wu had to call her aunt. She wanted Empress Wu to be her godmother? Wanner couldn't believe her ears. Chapter 201. Didn't hear wrong. The princess was 5 years younger than Empress Wu and 1 generation older than Empress Wu. In Wanner's view, there was no reason for the princess to take Empress Wu as her adoptive mother. However, in the eyes of the noble princess, there was another way to calculate it. It was from power and influence. Today, the princess brought this old ginseng into the palace to take her as her adoptive mother. The princess had accepted a bribe from Wu Qingxi and helped him arrange the marriage. In the end, although the marriage between the Wu and Li families became a reality, Wu Qingxi didn't become the emperor's son-in-law. Not only did she have to return the gift, but she also offended Wu Qingxi. If that was all, it would have been fine. Wu Qingxi only thought she was incompetent and didn't hate her. However, Princess Taiping had been severely offended by her. These past 2 days, the noble princess had discovered that the housekeeper of Taiping Mansion had frequent contact with the housekeeper of her mansion. The noble princess, who had a guilty conscience, immediately became suspicious. She called the housekeeper over and used both carrot and stick to interrogate him. When she found out that Princess Taiping was inquiring about her mansion, she couldn't help but panic. Wu Yuji married a beautiful princess, but because of this his wife died and his 2 sons were removed from the genealogy and had to leave their homes. Wu Yuji couldn't accept her kindness. Although Princess Taiping married into the Wu family, how could Wu Yuji subdue such a woman? If she wanted to make trouble for him, who could stop her? The princess was in a panic. Taizong Shimin's 9th daughter, Princess Dongyang, had happened, which made her even more afraid. 2 days ago, some gossip about Princess Dongyang had reached the palace. Wu Zetian was very displeased and immediately decreed that Princess Dongyang's fief was greatly reduced. Her 2 sons were also exiled to Wuzhou on a random charge. A few days ago, it was only the princes of the Li family who were unlucky, but now even the princesses were beginning to be unlucky. The women of the imperial family were in a great panic. Among these princesses, the noble princess was the one who put the most effort into currying favor with the empress. If it was a normal time, she might not be too afraid, but now that she had offended Wu Qingxi and Princess Taiping, she could not guarantee that she would be safe and sound. In a moment of desperation, the noble princess finally came up with a solution that wasn't really a solution. Acknowledge her as her godmother. Hearing the princess' words, Wu Zetian was also stunned. Looking at the princess kneeling in front of her with tears and mucus flowing down her face, Wu Zetian had a surprised smile on her face. It seemed that the princess also felt that this matter was too absurd. Wu Zetian thought for a moment and hesitantly said, "This, Princess, you and I are about the same age." When the noble princess heard this, she immediately stopped crying and laughed. So this is what the Heavenly Empress is worried about. In the past, King Kaoshan Yonglin had 13 foster sons, and the oldest one was not much younger than him. As long as the Heavenly Empress doesn't despise me, what does age matter? Dear mother, young Miss kowtows to you. As soon as the noble princess finished speaking, she did not allow Wu Zetian to say anything to stop her. She prostrated herself on the ground and kowtowed 3 times. This, ha ha ha, good, good, good. If that's the case, then we will acknowledge you as my daughter. Wu Zetian thought for a moment and immediately thought of the benefits of having Princess Li Tang as her daughter. She was the daughter of the founding emperor of the Tang dynasty, Li Yuan. As soon as she thought of this, Wu Zetian immediately asked someone to help her up with a smile on her face. She said in a pleasant manner, "Good. Since you have acknowledged me as your mother, this title of princess should also change. Ha! Among all the princesses under me, you are the oldest, so I will confer you the title of Great Elder Princess, and I will add the title of Yen, and Great Elder Princess of Yenin. This child thanks mother." The noble princess happily kowtowed. Shanghai Wanner saw her deliberately acting like a spoiled child and couldn't help but feel nauseous. The eunuchs and palace maids who were waiting on the side did not dare to show any expression, but their gazes were a little strange. The noble princess seemed to be completely unaware of this. She kowtowed again and happily snuggled up to Wu Zetian's side to receive pleasure. Wu Zetian smiled and said, "Mother has something that I want you to do. Now that you have become my daughter, you are even more duty-bound to do this." The noble princess hurriedly said, "Mother, if you have any orders, I will do my best." Wu Zetian said, "I have asked the imperial astronomer to take a look. The 9th of next month is a good day to welcome the bride. Taiping and Yuji's marriage should also be arranged. You were originally their matchmaker. Now that you are Taiping's elder sister and busy with national affairs, you have to help me worry about this marriage." The noble princess quickly replied, "Mother, rest assured. I will definitely make this marriage a lively and glorious one. Next month, Brother Qiao and Sister Ning will get married?" Good, very good." Yang Fan pulled Ma Qiao over and punched him on the shoulder. He laughed and said, "Well done. Such a good woman, like Sister Ning, has finally become your wife." Ma Qiao, who had always been carefree, actually blushed. Yang Fan happily said, "Brother Qiao, let me tell you first. Although I am your brother, once Sister Ning marries, I will be considered part of her family. If you dare to mistreat Sister Ning, I will not forgive you." Ma Qiao scratched the back of his head and said, "Look at what you are saying. She is so fierce. How would I dare to bully her? It would be good enough if she doesn't bully me." Ma Qiao's mother said, "Nonsense. Xiao Ning's daughter is virtuous and sensible. How could she be fierce? Xiao Fan, don't worry. Auntie is watching. If Qiao dares to bully Xiao Ning, Auntie will be the first to punish him." Yang Fan was overjoyed when he heard about Ma Qiao and Pasta's wedding. He spent the whole morning in the Ma family trying to make fun of Ma Qiao. At first, Ma Qiao was a little embarrassed, but later on he became thick-skinned and only grinned foolishly. Only then did Yang Fan lose interest in making fun of him. Yang Fan then asked about Ma Qiao's situation in the army. After all, Ma Qiao was from the White Horse Temple. The generals looked up to him. Moreover, he was willing to endure hardships during training. His swordsmanship was also outstanding among the soldiers. Therefore, he was recognized by Fei Hui, the commander of the Dragon Guards. Now he was transferred to be Fei Hui's bodyguard. These days, Ma Qiao has been diligently practicing his horsemanship and archery skills. His horse riding and archery skills have improved greatly, and he has gained the favor of General Fei. The reason why he was able to return a few days earlier to prepare for the betrothal was because General Fei had opened the door for him. Hearing that Ma Qiao had a promising future in the army, Yang Fan was also happy for him. After having lunch at the Ma family, Yang Fan and Xia Xiaoman declined Ma's mother's invitation to stay. The two then went to the Jiang family. Jiang Sining originally had a lively and cheerful temperament, but seeing that he was about to become a bride, he unknowingly became a lot more docile and gentle. When he spoke to Yang Fan, he also spoke in a soft and gentle voice, which made Yang Fan click his tongue in wonder. He didn't know if a man or a woman would never grow up if they never had a partner of the opposite sex, but he had seen the magic of marriage with his own eyes. Ma Qiao and Jiang Sining were the people he was most familiar with. Therefore, he felt the changes in the two the most. Xia Xiaoman had always been by her side. Ever since she left her elder brother when she was a child, she practiced martial arts under the strict supervision of her adoptive mother. Perhaps only Shangguan Lanji had a sisterly relationship with her. Later, Aunt Pei moved to Chang, and she entered the palace. Although she got along well with Gao Ing, Lan Yiqing, and the others, was that family love? No matter how good their friendship was, it couldn't make up for the regret of the lack of family love. Xiaoman silently looked at them as if they were a family. Her heart was full of envy. By the time they left the Xiuwen workshop, there was already a touch of twilight on the horizon. When they walked on the Tianjin Bridge, the sun had already brushed against the side of the mountain. Looking at the golden river flowing east under the twilight, Xia Xiaoman took a deep look in the direction of the distant Yanfu workshop. She said to Yang Fan, "That little guy is hiding in your house. He's safe for the time being, but what about him in the future?" Yang Fan said, "Let's take it one step at a time. Although I saved him, I have no right to decide how he should live in the future. In 2 days I'll go again and ask Duo if there are any relatives of the Black Teeth Changji or that madam." He also turned to look at the leisurely river and said with emotion, "Orphans don't have a good life. Even if there's someone to adopt them, it's still two different things to be together with blood relatives." When Xia Xiaoman heard this, she nodded vigorously. She was the one who understood Yang Fan's words the most. Yang Fan looked back at her with a smile and said, You always like to worry for others. Now you don't worry for me, but worry for that little guy. Don't worry, since I've promised that, madam. I'll definitely do it properly from beginning to end." As the two talked, they walked all the way to the Black Tortoise Gate. After entering the gate, before they could completely walk out, a figure suddenly appeared in the sunset. Because the person was looking at them with his back to the sun, the two could not see the person's appearance clearly. They only saw the silhouette of a military uniform. The shiny copper blade at his waist reflected a golden brilliance in the sunset. Yang Fan and Xia Xiaoman subconsciously moved to the left and right. The person laughed and said, "Erlang, why did you come back so late? I've been waiting for you for a long time." Yang Fan and Xia Xiaoman were hiding the person that Wu Yui was searching for. When they saw a general suddenly appear at the gate, they inevitably became a little vigilant. Fortunately, the person spoke at the right time. Yang Fan and Xia Xiaoman were very quick-witted people. When they heard the voice, their hands that were originally touching the hilt of the blade naturally dropped down. Yang Fan went up to greet him and said, "This is, Brother D." The person standing at the gate was the Fengqin Guards, General D. Guangyuan. Yang Fan's reaction just now was not big, so it did not arouse D. Guangyuan's vigilance. D. Guangyuan said with a smile, "In 2 days my father will be holding a family banquet. He specifically told me to invite you, my young friend, to attend. Yang Fan hurriedly said, "This kind of thing, second brother, you can just send someone to inform me. Why did you trouble second brother to wait here?" Di Guangyuan said with a smile, "How can a son dare not run the errand of Lord Father? I had no choice but to obediently come and invite you." Yang Fan humbly thanked him. Second brother is too polite. "When is the specific time set?" Di Guangyuan said, "In 3 days at noon." Yang Fan said, "All right, in 3 days, Yang Fan will definitely attend the banquet on time." In a house facing the wall in the backyard of Di Renjia's residence, the third son of the Di family, Di Guangzhou, was wearing a moon-white shirt. He pushed open the back window and looked outside. Suddenly, a head popped out from the top of the wall and looked around. Then he quickly climbed up to the top of the wall and brought the ladder in. Then he climbed down the ladder and ran to the bottom of the wall while carrying the ladder. Di Guangzhou asked impatiently, "How is it? Did you find out?" That person was a manservant who served Di Guangzhou. He put down the ladder and wiped the sweat off his forehead. "Third Langjun, I have found out. The time is set to be in 3 days." "All right." Di Guangzhou's fist met with his palm. "Bam!" he said fiercely. "In 3 days I will be there on time. I want to let Lord Father see which of his 3 sons is the most promising." Chapter 202. The Di family banquet was held in the pine and bamboo forest at the back of the house. It was early summer, and the forest was cool and pleasant. It was a good place to have a feast and relax. There was a small pavilion in the pine and bamboo forest, but because there were many people attending the banquet, the pavilion could only accommodate 3 to 5 people. So the banquet was moved outside the pavilion. The ground in the forest was covered with bamboo mats, on which there were more than 10 single beds. There was a low table in front of each bed for everyone to eat. Family banquets were usually only attended by relatives, but if the host's whole family and a few close friends attended the banquet, it could also be considered a family banquet. Di Renjia's wife had passed away many years ago and had 2 concubines. Now they were all women in their 50s, and they were accompanying a lang to the banquet. Di Renjia's eldest son, Di Guangxi, his wife, and his children, his second son, Di Guangyuan, his wife, and his children, and a nephew and his family who worked in the capital. As an outsider, Yang Fan was invited to the banquet, which showed how courteous Di Renjia was to him. Yang Fan thought that it was because he had saved Di Renjia in the Shangshan Square. But he didn't know that the reason why Di Renjia was so close to him was because he had saved the son of Blacktooth Changji. To Yang Fan's surprise, he was not the only outsider attending the banquet. There was also a guest with the surname Shin. Di Renjia waited for Yang Fan to greet him and said with a smile, "Come, come, let me introduce you. This is Shen Mu, a junior of mine from Chang'an. Shin Mu, this young friend is Yang Fan, whom I have mentioned to you before. You can call him Erlang since you are older." "Brother Shin, Erlang." Yang Fan and Shenmu looked at each other and smiled, then cupped their fists. Shenmu turned sideways and said, "This is my wife." Yang Fan looked over and saw a woman standing up from behind the table and nodding at him with a smile. Just one look and he felt a sense of enchantment. Among all the women he had seen so far, only Princess Taiping taking off her clothes under the lantern and meeting him naked could compare to this kind of feeling. What a natural beauty! Yang Fan's heart jumped and glanced at her figure that was not very delicate, but had an indescribable charm. He cupped his fists and bowed. Beta Persei greets eldest sister-in-law of Shin family. Di Renjia laughed and said, all right, don't be so polite. Come, sit down." At this time, Shu Ashung walked over and whispered a few words in Di Renjia's ear. Di Renjia's face flashed a trace of anger as he coldly snorted. "That unfilial son. Forget it if he doesn't want to come. Just ignore him." Shinmu asked with a smile, "What is troubling you, Master Di?" Di Renjia didn't hide it and snorted. Isn't it because of my third son, Guangzhou? That unfilial son has always run amok, and it really angers me. A few days ago, when we came back from Jiangnan, the old man taught him a good lesson. Today, he unexpectedly said that his hip injury has not healed and he cannot attend the banquet. No need to pay attention to him. Let's drink wine. In the backyard, Di Guangzhou was still wearing the loose moon-white clothes as he walked around the house. Suddenly, the door opened and his servant, Qin Yuan, flashed in from the outside. Di Guangzhou quickly asked, "How is it?" Qin Yuan panted and said, "It's fine." After I saw housekeeper Shu's reply, Lang ordered to start the banquet. He won't force Sen Lang Jun to attend. Humph. I said, "I don't want to go," and he ignored me. Father is really biased. Di Guangzhou angrily complained for a while, but suddenly his anger turned to joy. This is also good in case he finds out. Hurry up and help me change. It's already past noon. We better not be late. Qin Yuan quickly fetched a robe and helped Di Guangzhou put on his clothes. Di Guangzhou opened the back window and looked out. He was about to walk up to the window. "Ouch!" Di Guangzhou snorted and said, "The old man hit me so hard that my butt still hurts. Move the table over here." Qin Yuan quickly pushed the table under the window. Di Guangzhou stepped on the table and climbed up the window. He carefully flipped out of the window. Qin Yuan also climbed over and carried the ladder to the wall. After setting up the ladder, Di Guangzhou climbed up the ladder. After Di Guangzhou climbed up, Qin Yuan looked around and hurriedly climbed up using both her hands and feet. Soon, both of them squatted on the wall and pulled the ladder up to the outside of the wall. Di Guangzhou climbed down the ladder and said, "You go back to your room. If anyone comes looking for me, just say that I'm asleep. Don't worry, Sen Lang Jun." Qin Yuan agreed and looked at Di Guangzhou running away. She then pulled the ladder back. In the bamboo forest, there was a joyous song and laughter. Although the Di family did not have any singers and dancers, they hired a few from the Zhuo Jiaofang to play and sing, which greatly enhanced the atmosphere of the banquet. Di Renjia talked and laughed. Shenmu answered his questions skillfully, and the Di family's eldest son, Guangxi, and second son, Guangyuan, were also cheerful and eloquent people, so the atmosphere of the banquet was very lively. On the side of the women, Di Renjia's 2 wives and 2 daughters-in-law, as well as Shenmu's women, were also talking and laughing. After 30 minutes of drinking, Di Renjia's 2 granddaughters walked to the front of the banquet and sang a song for their grandfather. It was a popular song, "Dancing, Charming Lady." Although the tune was the same, the lyrics were obviously not about Empress Wu's ascension to the throne. Di Renjia listened and clapped his hands and laughed. Then his grandsons went on stage one by one. Those who could sing and those who could dance pushed the atmosphere of the banquet to a climax. "Grandpa, dance! Grandpa, dance!" Seeing that their grandpa was happy, the little guys came up and pulled him up. "Ha ha ha, good, good, good. I will dance with you." Di Renjia laughed heartily and stood up to leave the banquet. He walked to the center of the banquet with his grandsons and granddaughters. The music had already changed to a very cheerful dance song. The crisp and melodious sound of the drums rang out. Di Renjia twisted his body and raised his arms. His sleeves swayed, and he spun and jumped up. There was actually a kind of elegant feeling. Although he was old and his movements were slow, his dance movements were completely 2 beats slower than the sound of the drums. Because he was fat, it was harder for him to show his elegant posture. However, his every movement had a kind of elegant feeling. Di Renjia was the son of an official family, so he was familiar with this dance since he was young. It was very beautiful when he danced. How could the son still sit there and watch when the father was on the stage? Di Guangxi and Di Guangyuan also excitedly got off the stage and accompanied Di Renjia to sing and dance. Di Guangxi and Di Guangyuan danced a few times, then waved their arms and turned towards Yang Fan and Shenmu. Yang Fan had never danced this kind of dance where the sons of nobles indulged in singing and dancing in front of the banquet. He was watching with relish when Di Guangyuan suddenly turned to his side. His two hands kept making dance gestures, and he smiled and asked him to dance with him. Yang Fan saw this and couldn't help but feel embarrassed. He really didn't know how to dance in the Central Plains. He only knew some very simple dance movements, which he learned from the local boys and girls at the bonfire party in Nanyang. At that time, when he danced together, he felt that it was very dynamic. However, when he saw the hundreds of people dancing on Ding Ding Street during the Lantern Festival this year, he felt that it was much inferior to this dance. Now, compared to the dance of Di Renjie and his father, it looked even more ugly. While Yang Fan was hesitating, Shinmu had already been happily pulled onto the stage by Di Guangxi. This kind of invitation by Di Guangxi and Di Guangyuan was called dance invitation. In a more elegant way, it was called dance invitation. When inviting a guest to dance with them, it didn't matter if the guest danced well or not. But not accepting the invitation was very impolite behavior. Of course, Shinmu understood this custom. So when Di Guangxi invited him, he happily stood up. Hee ha ha! When Shinmu started to dance, Yang Fan almost spat out a mouthful of wine. He saw Shanmu excitedly beating the beat, 1, 2, 3, patting the shoulder, 1, 2, 3, beating the chest, 1, 2, 3, patting the leg, 1, 2, 3, patting the shoulder, and so on. It was extremely simple. His movements were so clumsy and ridiculous that he was like a gorilla, but no one was surprised. The women were still clapping their hands and watching with great interest. This was because this kind of dance at a banquet was originally an impromptu program. As long as it was in tune, it was fine. As long as it was happy, it was fine. No one was picky. Di Guanyuan was still waving at Yang Fan. When Yang Fan saw that no one found it funny when Shinmu danced like a gorilla, he thought that it was no big deal if he danced like a monkey, so he mustered up his courage and stood up. When Di Guangyuan saw him stand up, he moved his dance steps back. Yang Fan minded his own business and danced according to his own dance movements. The gorilla looked at the monkey, and the monkey looked at the gorilla. Suddenly, the monkey and the gorilla were both confident. In front of Tiangong Temple, Abbot Yuan Shu stood on the steps, accompanied by Imperial Messenger Fu Yi. Fu Yi tiptoed and asked loudly, "Where are the people from Chang'an? Have the people from Chang'an arrived yet?" "They're here, they're all here." A few men with Guangzhou accents waved at him. "Where are the people from all the shops? Have they all arrived yet?" "They're here, they're here." A few shopkeepers and people dressed as shop assistants also answered loudly. "Where are the people from Shilin? Have the people from the Imperial Academy and the other academies arrived yet?" Fu Yi named them one by one. When he named the children of the officials, someone answered loudly, "Di Guangzhou has not arrived yet." Fu Yi frowned when he heard this. Many children of the officials' families had also arrived. Looking at the people present, there were no less than 800 or 900 people from all walks of life. Di Guangzhou's presence was not a big deal. But Di Guangzhou was not a big deal. The person behind him was Di Renjie. If Di Guangzhou participated in the persuasion, who would know that it was Di Guangzhou's idea? They would definitely think that this was Di Renjie's approval of his son's action. At that time, Di Renjie would not be able to explain himself even if he had a lot of mouths. In addition, with the Empress Dowager's appreciation of him, he would have no choice but to admit that he was part of the Wu family's party. Therefore, Fu Yi was quite unhappy that Di Guangzhou had not arrived yet. Just as he was thinking, someone suddenly shouted, "He's here, he's here! Di Sanling is here!" From afar, Di Guangzhou covered his buttocks and jogged over. He panted and said, "I'm here, I'm here." Fu Yi wanted to reprimand him, but after thinking about it, he held back. He raised his voice and said to the crowd, "All right, everyone is here. Everyone, let's go to the gate of heaven to petition the Empress and persuade her to ascend the throne. Everyone be alert and let's go." Chapter 203. Erlang's accent is a little foreign. He doesn't seem to be from Luoyang. After the song and dance ended, everyone returned to their seats. After drinking a cup of wine, Shinmu took advantage of the warm atmosphere and started to get closer to Yang Fan. Yang Fan smiled. Brother Shin has good ears. I grew up in Jiaoji and only arrived in Luoyang at the end of last year. Jiaoji? That's not near. Shinmu's eyes flashed and asked, May I know why Erlang left his hometown and traveled thousands of miles to Luoyang? Little brother! Before Yang Fan could finish, Diren just suddenly slammed the table and shouted, Where did this unfilial son go? Get Qing Yuan here. Yang Fan and Shenmu looked at Direnjie and saw him glaring angrily. Shu Asheng was standing at the side and waving at the outside of the forest. After a while, 2 servants escorted a handsome manservant into the bamboo forest. When the manservant saw Direnjie, he called out timidly, Ah, Lang, Direnjie said angrily. I'm asking you, where did San Lang go? Qing Yuan stammered. I really don't know. Direnjie slapped the table with a bang, causing the cups and plates to clatter. Bastard, you still want to fool me. I'm not dead yet, and you want Di Guangzhou to be the head of the household? You don't even dare to answer my questions. Qing Yuan was so scared that she knelt on the ground and said, Ah Lang, please don't be angry. Ah Lang, please don't be angry. As it turned out, although Di Renjie was unhappy that Di Guangzhou was not able to attend the banquet, he was no longer angry after the 2 sidesure foreign quietly consoled him. After all, Di Guangzhou was his son and the youngest. Once his anger subsided, he couldn't help but feel pity for him. He asked Shu Asheng to prepare a table of food and wine for Di Guangzhou. Qing Yuan was thinking that if someone outside asked, she would say that San Lang Jun was resting. She didn't expect Shu Asheng to bring a table of food and wine. Qing Yuan mumbled something in her room. She only said that San Lang Jun was asleep, but her voice sounded a little timid because it was her steward who asked the question. How could Shu Asheng believe him? He also knew that Ah Lang bestowed this table of noodles to show his tender affection toward his youngest son. How could he not deliver this kind intention? So he asked Qing Yuan to open the door and bring the food and wine inside. This time, Qing Yuan panicked and revealed a flaw in her words, causing Shu Asheng to become suspicious. Seeing that the door didn't open, Shu Asheng called someone to go around to the back window to take a look. The window was unlatched, and when they pushed the window open, it was the bedroom, but there was no sign of Di Guangzhou. Shu Asheng knew that Di Guangzhou wasn't in, so he ordered Qing Yuan to open the door. This time, Qing Yuan didn't dare to resist and could only obediently open the door. Shu Asheng rushed into the room, but he could not find San Lang Jun. He hurried back to report to Di Renjie. When Qing Yuan saw that her Ah Lang was furious, she didn't dare to keep quiet, so she obediently told him the truth. Di Renjie originally thought that his 3rd son couldn't bear the loneliness after being quiet for 2 days, so he slipped out to indulge in debauchery again. When he heard from Qing Yuan that there was a gathering of people to persuade Di Guangzhou and that he was unwilling to be left out, he ran over to join in. Di Renjie trembled for a while, then he shouted in pain, This old man's reputation is going to be ruined by this unfilial son. Di Renjie was so angry that he started coughing. Di Guangxi and Di Guangyuan quickly went to support him. Di Guangxi patted his father's back and comforted him. Father, don't be angry. He then turned to Qing Yuan and shouted, Good dog! Tell me quickly, when will they persuade him to enter? When Qing Yuan saw that Ah Lang was so angry, she didn't dare to protect her young master anymore. She hurriedly replied, Not yet. I heard that they agreed to go to the gate of heaven to persuade him to enter at this time. Di Guangyuan looked up at the sky and said to Di Renjie, Father, please calm down. Maybe there's still time. I'll go bring him back. Yang Fan said, Brother Guangyuan, I'll go with you. Di Guangyuan said, Good, let's go now. Di Renjia coughed a few times. His face was red as he waved his hand and said, "You guys go quickly. You must catch this unfilial son and don't let him participate in the persuasion." The Di family raised a few good horses. Yang Fan and Di Guangyuan each rode a horse and left the Di residence in a hurry. They galloped straight to the north of the city. The two of them galloped all the way and past the Tianjin Bridge. From afar, they could see thousands of people swarming towards the gate of heaven. There were less than 1,000 people petitioning today, but there were more than 3,000 to 4,000 people who heard the news and came to see what was going on. Such a large number of people swarmed towards the gate of heaven. The guards of the gate of heaven did not know what was going on. They hurriedly sent out a warning for reinforcements. The guards of the palace unsheathed their swords and loaded their arrows, putting on a serious posture. Di Guangyuan was shocked and said, "There are so many people, all kinds of people, good people and snakes mixed together. Where are we going to find the third brother?" Yang Fan said, "The third young master is the son of Master Di. I'm afraid they value the third young master's identity. If that's the case, the third young master should be a leading figure." Di Guangyuan was startled by his words and said, "That's right. Let's go." The two of them galloped their horses and chased ahead. If they continued forward, they would be close to the palace. Without the permission of the empress, horses were not allowed to gallop here. When the imperial guards heard the news and saw that there were people galloping over, they immediately raised their spears and formed a forest of spears. In the middle, a leader held his saber and shouted, "Stop! Whoever dares to gallop in the palace must be tired of living." Yang Fan and Di Guangyuan both came from the banquet and were dressed in casual clothes. Di Guangyuan took out his fish talisman and hurriedly flashed it and shouted, "General Di Guangyuan of the Imperial Guards is here. Who dares to stop me?" The leader of the guards did not give him any face. He rolled his eyes and coldly scolded, "This is the palace. General, do you have the permission of the Empress to ride horses in the palace?" Yang Fan took out his 100-riding fish talisman and flashed it at him and shouted, "Get out of the way!" When the leader saw the two words 100-riding fish talisman, he hurriedly turned sideways and waved his hand. More than 10 of his subordinates put away their spears with a schwa sound and made way. The two of them lifted the reins and rushed out. "There he is!" The two of them chased to the front and indeed saw Di Guangzhou. Di Guangzhou was walking in the group of people behind Imperial Messenger Fu Yi. A few days ago he had been taught a lesson by his father and his buttocks were injured. The way he walked was very weird, so he was more conspicuous. Yang Fan and Fu Yi were riding on their horses and looked down from above. They saw him at a glance. Di Guangyuan gritted his teeth and was about to turn his horse to the front. Yang Fan had an idea and hurriedly stopped him, saying, "Brother Di, please wait. If you and I rush forward like this, everyone will notice us. No one will pay attention to us now, but when people talk about the situation here and ask about San Longjuan's identity, we will inevitably embarrass Master Di. You and I will get down from our horses and blend into the crowd. We will quietly kidnap San Langjun." Di Guangyuan was confused because of his concern. After being reminded by Yang Fan, he realized that it was indeed not advisable to directly stop his horse to the front. He hurriedly agreed and got down from his horse. The two of them were dressed in casual clothes. These commoners who came clamoring were from all walks of life. Other than the leaders, Fu Yi and Monk Yuan Shu, most of them did not know the identities of the other people. They did not know what Yang Fan and Di Guangyuan were here for. The two of them blended into the crowd and hurried forward. At this moment, the group of people who were trying to persuade them to enter the Zetian Gate. The guards at the gate used their shields and knives to set up a huge shield wall. A junior colonel stood in front of them with a knife in his hand. He shouted with a murderous aura, "Stop! If you take another step, you will be killed." Fu Yi raised both of his hands and stopped the advancing crowd. He took 3 steps forward alone. His face was red with excitement, and his voice trembled as he said, Imperial Messenger Fu Yi, together with the officials and people of Luoyang and the people of various places, have jointly written a petition. We respectfully ask the Empress to follow the will of heaven and the will of the people to ascend the throne. Di Guangzhou stood in the crowd and looked at him. He was so envious that his eyes were red. Although he was one of the leading figures in the persuasion, there was a world of difference between one and the only one. Fu Yi held the name list and stood at the front. He was the initiator. Once the Empress Dowager ascended the throne, his contribution, just as Di Guangyuan was thinking this jealously, 2 people suddenly appeared on his left and right. The one on the left came close to him, put one hand around his waist and the other on his shoulder, as if they were acquaintances, and took a step back with a grin on his face. Di Guangzhou only felt that his waist was being held by an arm that was like an iron hoop. His shoulder was being held and half of his body was numb. He was dragged into the crowd. He could not help but be shocked and angry. He was about to open his mouth to shout when the person on the right had already turned in front of him. His eyes were spitting fire as he shouted in a low voice, Senlang, if you want to end your life in the Di family, then shout. When Di Guangzhou saw the look in his second brother's eyes, he was so scared that his heart turned cold. He did not dare to respond. After a moment of hesitation, he was quickly dragged to the back of the crowd by the 2 people. Fu Yi stood at the front, completely unaware of what was happening behind him. He held a thick stack of names, handprints, and a cross high above his head. He took 3 steady steps forward. His knees bent, and he knelt straight on the ground. Using all the strength in his body, he shouted, respectfully inviting the Empress to ascend the throne and become the Emperor. The people at the back all stretched their necks to see his movements. When they heard him shout, they immediately knelt down and shouted, respectfully inviting the Empress to ascend the throne and become the Emperor. It was just that these people had not practiced before. When the people at the front knelt down, they shouted. When the people at the back saw the people at the front knelt down, they only started to kneel down. So the shouting did not have the slightest bit of grandeur. The officer holding the saber saw the situation and took 2 steps back. He suddenly waved his hand and shouted, You all wait. Do not act rashly. When he finished, he suddenly turned around and shouted, Quickly report to the Empress. At this moment, Yang Fan and Di Guangyuan had already dragged Di Guangzhou out of the crowd of petitioners. They passed through the crowd of onlookers and found their 2 horses. With their backs facing the gate of heaven, they headed into the distance. In the hall of martial accomplishment, Wu Qingxi and Wu Sanxi, who had been waiting for news in the palace, appeared. They were excitedly reporting to Wu Zetian the news of the people urging the Empress to ascend the throne and become the Emperor. Haha, ridiculous, really ridiculous. I am a woman, and also the Empress Dowager of the Tang Dynasty. Why would I become the Emperor? Could it be that I would steal my son's country? Wu Zetian laughed and said to Wan, don't you think these people are completely muddle-headed? Wan chuckled and said, the people are simple. They only want the Empress to treat them well and hope that the Empress will be the rightful ruler of the world. Wu Zetian's face cleared up. Wu Qingxi quickly said, Yes, the Empress is right. There are also people from far away who came from Chang, and to persuade the Empress. The Empress becoming the Emperor is what the people want. Wu Qingxi did not want to be left behind, so he quickly added, Abbot Yuan Shu of the Heavenly Temple has also brought many monks here. Yuan Shu said that the Empress of Heaven is the reincarnation of Mithra, so you should be the Jambo Tea Master and unite the world. Wu Zetian said with a faint smile, the Jambo Bodhi to unify the world? Haha, this old monk also came to join in the fun. Wu Zetian waved her hand and said lightly, Let the Empress Dowager stay in the palace. Tell them to go back to their own fields and do their work well. Don't listen to people and come to the palace to cause trouble. Wu Sansi was stunned and said in surprise, "The Empress, this is what the people want. If the Empress refuses the people's request, the people will be disappointed." Shanghai wan, or glanced at him, and a trace of contempt flashed in her eyes. "Idiot!" Even if the previous emperor passed away, the crown prince appointed by the edict would still need hundreds of requests from the officials before he is willing to ascend to the throne. If the empress agreed so eagerly, wouldn't you be belittling your own status? You don't even understand this. Sure enough, Wu Zetian's expression became colder, and she ordered, "Do as I say." Wu Sansi did not dare to persuade her anymore, and quickly replied, "Yes." Wu Sansi turned around and was about to leave when Wu Zetian continued. "Although that Fu Yi is a troublemaker, his thoughts are for the country and the people. Go and pass the edict. Fu Yi will be promoted by 1 level and promoted to rank 5. Tell him to do his work well in the future." "Father!" Di Guangzhou was brought back to the Di residence by Di Guangyuan and Yang Fan. When he saw his angry father, his face turned pale. Di Guangyuan briefly explained to his father how he had brought Di Guangzhou back. Di Renjie glared at Di Guangzhou for a long time after listening to the story. However, he could only shake his head in the end. He waved his hand dejectedly and said, "Take him away and guard him. Tomorrow, send him back to his hometown in Taiyuan to guard the ancestral shrine." Di Guangzhou turned pale with fright and quickly begged, "Father, I know I was wrong. Father, please spare me." Di Renjie painfully said, "Take him away." Di Guangyuan saw his father like this and quickly pulled his third brother away. Di Renjie looked up to the sky and sighed. He then bowed to Yang Fan and said, "Nephew, this old man is indebted to you today." Yang Fan quickly dodged to the side and said, "Uncle, this is too much for Yang Fan. I don't deserve it. I really don't deserve it." Di Renjie said, "You saved this old man's life. Although this old man is grateful, I don't take it to heart. But today, you saved this old man's reputation. This kindness is heavy. How can this old man not remember it?" Di Renjie looked at Yang Fan and felt that he was young and promising. He was respectful and polite, and he was able to save Blacktooth Chang's youngest son. Compared to his Sanlang, he couldn't help but feel sad. He sighed and said to Yang Fan, "How old is Erlang?" Yang Fan said, "This nephew has just turned 18. Di Renjie said gently, "You will be considered an adult in another 2 years. You have no relatives or elders in Luoyang. This crowning ceremony, this old man will host it for you, okay?" When he said this, it meant that he wanted to raise Yang Fan as his own nephew. Yang Fan was overjoyed and quickly bowed. "This nephew can't ask for more." "Good, very good." Di Renjie laughed and said, "Then this old man will have to think of a courtesy name for you." He paced a few steps and thought about it while stroking his beard. Suddenly he turned around and said to Yang Fan, "Yuan Big Fong Noble, this old man will give you a courtesy name, Yuan Fong. What do you think?" Chapter 204. Thank you, Uncle, for bestowing this name. From Yang Fan's point of view, the name bestowed by Di Renjie was indeed not bad. It was much better than his master Zhang, 'twas playful, Xingqi name. There was no reason for him to reject it. A strange expression flashed across Shenmu's face as he stood at the side. He then smiled and said, "Congratulations to Grandmaster Di for thinking so highly of Erlang. Hee. Shenmu is also Grandmaster Di's junior. We will be even closer in the future and should visit each other more often." Yang Fan smiled and said, "Little brother and brother Shen hit it off at first sight. We will visit each other often in the future." Di Renjie was unhappy with the Di family's incident. As guests, Yang Fan and Shenmu could not stay for long. They chatted for a while more before bidding farewell to Di Renjie. The eldest son of the Di family, Di Guangxi, sent the two out of the residence. Yang Fan and Shenmu asked each other, It turned out that Shenmu lived in Luoyang's south 5-mile village, while Yang Fan was heading north. The two bade farewell by the roadside and went their separate ways. Shenmu boarded the carriage and said to Yang Shuarao with a light smile, "Old man D must have noticed that I have the intention of recruiting Yang Fan. Bestowing a name? Humph. He is telling me that he has also taken a liking to Yang Fan and is telling me not to have any ideas about Yang Fan." Yang Shuarao said, "Then why did you say in front of him that you want to date Yang Fan? He is just a bodyguard. Do you really want to compete with Grandmaster D?" Shenmu smiled and said, "We really do not have any capable people in the army. Although Yang Fan is just a small bodyguard now, with the connections he has accumulated, it is fine if we do not give him a chance. As long as we give him a chance, it will not be difficult for him to soar to the sky in one go. We must compete for this person." He leaned back on the seat and leisurely said, "Fu Yui has persuaded him. The Empress is about to ascend the throne. After she ascends the throne, I will personally make a trip to Longyu. Before that, I must find a chance to have a good talk with Yang Fan." Young people were all hot-blooded. How could they be as calm as Duke D? "Since Grandmaster D gave him a courtesy name, I will give him a bright future. What do you think he will choose?" The ox cart creaked as it traveled southward. He went out of the city gate, crossed the moat, walked along the official road for 3 miles, and turned onto the small road of 5 Miles Village. 900 people petitioned for the Empress to change the name of the country and change her name to Empress. This piece of news had been known by everyone, but they had only dared to discuss it in private and did not dare to publicly comment on it. For a moment, the voices of discussion about the Empress ascension were in an uproar. Even though Wu Zetian had left the petition unread, the imperial censor Fuyu, he was immediately promoted from lower 6th rank to upper 5th rank. This signal could not be more obvious. From that day onwards, a large number of petitions and petitions from the people were sent to the Hall of Martial Accomplishment every day, asking for the Empress to ascend to the throne and become the Empress. Following that, the monks also began to petition and held a large number of Dharma meetings to spread the news to the believers. Not long after, the Taoists could not hold it in any longer. Seeing that the Taoists might be further suppressed, many Taoist disciples also abandoned the surname Li Tang royal family and joined the ranks of those who wanted to persuade the Empress to ascend. In the end, some of the Li Tang royal family members did not dare to not express their stance. Under the lead of the princess, some of the Li Tang royal family members also used the name of Li Tang's royal family members to request the Empress to ascend to the throne. However, Wu Zetian, who was in the center of this storm, did not move at all. Some of the important court officials had not expressed their stance. The rulers of the 4 barbarian states had not expressed their stance, and the current Emperor Li Dan had not expressed his stance, therefore. She continued to wait, very patiently. Time passed very quickly. Very soon, it was the day of Princess Taiping's wedding. When the news spread, it did not cause too much of a stir in the court. The flower of Luoyang, the princess of the Tang dynasty, Princess Taiping's remarriage. This kind of news was originally the focus of the common people, but now it was full of rumors that the Empress was the reincarnation of Maitreya and that the world would soon be surnamed Wu. The princess of the Tang dynasty marrying a member of the Wu family only helped to spread this news. Yang Fan also heard the news of Princess Taiping's marriage. Only then did he know that the date of her marriage was the same day as Ma Qiao's. Hearing this news and thinking of Princess Taiping's attitude towards this marriage, Yang Fan could not help but secretly sigh. He did not have a bad impression of Princess Taiping, but he was even more clear that it was impossible for him to have any relationship with this princess. It was even more impossible for him to have an affair with this princess out of sympathy. To make him the man behind Taiping, to be a plaything for Taiping when she was lonely, how could a good man disdain to do that? As for making Taiping his woman, that was pure wishful thinking. Taiping was a member of the royal family, and that kind of arrogance was deep in her bones. Wan Er was like water and could see her husband as the sky, but Taiping could never become one. Even though she liked him, it was impossible for her to treat him as an equal and be a gentle wife. Moreover, what ability did he have to stop Wu Zetian from marrying his daughter? It was as difficult as ascending to heaven for him to marry one, let alone a princess. Even if he was qualified to marry the princess, so what? Wu Yuji was more qualified than him. But what happened to Wu Yuji? The news of this prince consort Wu Yuji, whom everyone thought was lucky but was actually extremely unfortunate, had already spread among the common people. His wife, who had become estranged from him, was poisoned to death because the princess wanted to marry a man of lower status. His 2 sons were removed from the family tree, changed to his surname, and fled to a foreign land. Even his youngest daughter, because she was afraid that Princess Taiping would be an eyesore and inexplicably have a sudden death, had quickly found a family to marry away. Wu Yuji was a high-ranking and powerful internal guard general, the nephew of Empress Wu, and was about to become a member of the imperial family. But he still ended up like this kind of prince consort who killed his wife and children, other than those who were blinded by greed and had lost all conscience. Who would be willing to do it? That kiss on Yuan Yi was like a traceless spring dream. If it had caused a ripple in Yang Fan's heart, this ripple had already calmed on the 9th day, because Princess Taiping was getting married. The entire imperial family had to attend this grand wedding. Therefore, the guard duty was especially heavy. All the guards had to be on duty on this day, not to mention that Yang Fan was supposed to be on duty on this day. However, he had already asked for leave from the brigade commander Su Liang. Yang Fan had originally been worried that Su Liang would not agree to leave. Who knew that as soon as he mentioned it, Su Liang would readily agree. This caused Yang Fan to have an especially good impression of Su Liang. What he did not know was that this was because of a clever hint from Shanghai one. In Su Liang's heart, he did not see him as a guard at all. The wedding was officially held at dusk. Just after noon, Yang Fan returned to the barracks to change into casual clothes and prepared to leave the palace. When he passed by Luoqing Palace Hall, one suddenly came over with 2 palace maids. Seeing Yang Fan at a glance, one stopped and ordered the 2 palace maids, "You 2 go first." The 2 palace maids responded and flashed into Luoqing Palace Hall. From time to time, there were palace maids and eunuchs rushing back and forth on the royal road. Yang Fan could not show it. He could only act like an ordinary guard and bow to Shanghai. Only then did he call in a low voice, Shanghai Wan said softly, "Lang Jun is going to Ma Chiao's house now." 2 days ago, when they met, Yang Fan had mentioned to her that he was going to the Ma family today to congratulate them. He did not expect that she was so busy that she actually remembered the matter of an insignificant person, just because this person was related to him. Yang Fan's heart warmed, and he softly replied, "Yes." Shanghai Wana looked at his hands and asked, "Are you going empty-handed?" Yang Fan said, "You also know that I am not good at buying things. If I just casually take some things, it may not be suitable as a wedding gift. In any case, both sides of the wedding are not strangers to me. I only need to take some money, and that will be enough." Wan coquettishly said, "Men are careless. Marriage is a major event in one's life. How can it be so casual? Even if Ma Chiao is as carefree as you, Jiang Kai-shek is a girl. She sees you as her brother and will not blame you. But in the end, it will be a pity. Besides, if you're close to them, other people will think that you don't care about them. Wan has already prepared a gift for you. When you arrive at the Tianjin Bridge, go to the first hairdressing shop on the right to get it. Tell the shopkeeper that Madame Zheng's family sent you to pick up the package, and the shopkeeper will give it to you." Yang Fan was surprised and said, "Wan, you are so busy, yet you are still thinking about this matter for me." Wan rolled her eyes at him and said, "You and I are not strangers. Don't say such polite words. Didn't you say that Ma Chiao is like your brother and Jiang Kai-shek is like your sister?" If that is the case, then Ma Chiao is Wan Er's uncle and Jiang Kai-shek is Wan Er's sister-in-law. How can Wan Er not express my feelings? When she said this, her soft and white face couldn't help but blush. Yang Fan was moved and said, "So, you were waiting for me here?" Wan Er said shyly, "Of course not. I was so busy today. I only told Xiao Man to help me keep an eye on you. I heard that you were coming out, so I came to greet you. You are a man. I thought that you would not think about these trivial things. These things should be Wan Er's to worry about." She glanced into the distance and said to Yang Fan, "Well, I have too many things to do today. I won't talk to you any more. Go, Lang Jun. Remember, don't get drunk. Wan Er." She glanced affectionately at Yang Fan and walked past him. The moment she brushed past him, she said something shameful in a small voice to Yang Fan's ears. "Wan Er is looking forward to the day when I can buy my own dowry for my husband." Yang Fan turned around and looked at Wan Er's beautiful figure as she flashed into Luo Qing Palace Hall. His heart was full of love. He really wanted to hold Wan Er tightly in his arms and proudly announced to everyone, "This is my woman." The palace was decorated with red ribbons. When he walked out of the palace gates, a grand wedding procession dressed in colorful clothes had already lined up neatly in front of the palace gates. Yang Fan bypassed the waiting procession and walked past the Tianjin Bridge. The first shop he saw was a jewelry and headwear shop. When the shopkeeper heard that he was sent by the Zheng Manor to pick up the items, he quickly took the package that the customer had left and asked the shopkeeper to check it in front of him. The gift that Wan Er prepared for Yang Fan was very thoughtful. Based on Yang Fan's status and wealth, she carefully selected a few suitable gifts. Of course, the gifts that she chose were also suitable for the status of the two parties. If she gave them a set of gold wine utensils, they would have no use for it other than to exchange it for money. The gifts that Wan Er prepared were very thoughtful. Headwear, silk and satin, men and women's robes, and so on. Shoes that symbolized infidelity, mirrors that symbolized broken marriages, fans that symbolized unhappiness, and so on would never be given. Yang Fan did not understand these customs. If he really had to buy them himself, he might have bought some inauspicious things to send. Yang Fan tidied it up and folded it into a bundle and put it on his shoulder. When he passed by Princess Taiping's Shangshan Square, he saw that the square's gate was already hung with a red silk banner. The gate was wide open and was guarded by soldiers, not allowing unauthorized people to enter or leave. The Tang dynasty only had the princess's mansion, not the prince consort's mansion. Princess Wu Yu and Princess Shang were going to live in the princess's mansion. He only needed to empty his hands and move to the princess's mansion. Yang Fan carried the package and looked deeply at the square door. He puffed out his chest and walked toward the Xiaowen Square. Chapter 205. When Yang Fan arrived at Ma Chao's house, it was just past midnight. The Ma family's house was already full of people inside and outside. In addition to the neighbors, the Ma family's large group of relatives and friends had all arrived. Some were from the city, some were from the countryside, and some were bringing the old and the young. It was a magnificent sight. The Ma family's small courtyard couldn't hold so many people, let alone the house. Therefore, they set up a water table outside the house. Because the banquet hadn't started, some of the guests were sitting, some were standing, and some were calling each other, whispering to each other as they chatted. A kitchen was set up in the east corner. The invited chef was busy there, and the smell of meat wafted over from time to time. The Ma family's house had 3 rooms. In the middle was the central room, and on the left and right were residences. Originally, the east room was the largest, and it had always been occupied by Ma's mother. Now it had been vacated and cleaned up. The walls had been repainted, and it was used as a new house. Ma's mother moved to the west room. Although Ma Chiao was filial and didn't want his mother to suffer in the slightest, he couldn't change his mother's mind on this point. Moreover, as a bride, it wouldn't be good for her to suffer in the small room, so he obeyed his mother's wishes. When Yang Fan arrived, Ma Chiao had already changed into a crimson official robe. He wore a crown on his head, and he was so nervous that his face was sweating. The crimson official robe was originally the court robe of the 4th to 6th rank imperial court officials, but the imperial court made an exception. The bridegroom and bride could wear the official robe with a leather belt and a phoenix crown. Therefore, Ma Chiao could dress like this. Seeing Yang Fan rushing over, Ma Chiao grinned at him. His face was a little stiff. It seemed that this wedding really made him nervous. Fortunately, there was Su Fangzheng and a few enthusiastic and respectable people to help him manage the wedding. Everything was arranged by these people, so it was busy but not chaotic. In the afternoon, because it was early summer, the sky was still bright. Moreover, Pasta's house was not far from the Ma family. They lived in the same square, so there was no need to greet the bride so early. However, the relatives and friends had been waiting impatiently. After some noise, Su Fangzheng decided to greet the bride, so a large group of people clamored out of the Ma family. Yang Fan accompanied Ma Chiao out of the Ma family's courtyard. There was a hired carriage parked outside the door. The horse's neck was tied with a piece of red cloth, and it looked happy and energetic. Ma Chiao was the groom, and the groom had to greet the bride. So, Ma Chiao drove the carriage to Pasta's house. When they arrived, Xiang accompanied Ma Chiao into the courtyard. They greeted the mother-in-law and relatives, and then took them to the carriage. In Pasta's house, Annie Hua and a group of aunts were helping. Miss Xiaodong and a group of girls were accompanying Pasta in the house. According to the custom, at this time, the groom should read the make-up poem, but that was an elegant thing played by scholars. Many ordinary people could not even read, so how could they read the make-up poem? Therefore, Ma Chiao and a group of male companions knocked on the door and shouted Pasta's name outside. A group of girls inside laughed and refused to open the door, only asking some questions to make things difficult for them. If these girls deliberately made things difficult, Ma Chiao would have to stand in front of the door for more than half an hour to successfully take his wife out. After hearing a few words from the sisters, Pasta could not bear it and could not help but speak up for Ma Chiao, begging the sisters to let him go. Seeing this scene, the sisters teased Pasta for a while, opened the door, and hugged her out. Pasta was wearing a dark green dress. The groom wore red, and the bride wore green. This was the Tang people's wedding attire, and the idiom red man and green woman came from this. Pasta had big sleeves and a silk drape, looking grand and dignified. Her hair was decorated with gold and silver hairpins. Although they were not real gold and silver ornaments, there was no difference. Her hair was full of pearls and jade, making her look very noble. Unfortunately, Yang Fan stood on tiptoe and did not see what she looked like. Pasta did not wear a veil. Although veils had appeared since the Han Dynasty, veils were not popular in the Tang Dynasty. Most people used round fans when they got married. Pasta held a round fan in her hand. The fan was decorated with white feathers, and it covered her face completely. Only a little skin could be seen from the side. The bride's family also hired a carriage. Pasta was supported by Miss Xiaodong and another girl from the brothel. They slowly boarded the carriage. Ma Chiao acted as the coachman and drove the carriage forward. The wheels only rolled 3 times before he got off and boarded his own carriage. The coachman drove the carriage for the bride, while Ma Chiao whipped the horse and rushed home to prepare to pick up the bride. This kind of rule was called anti-horse. If the bride was found not to be a virgin or had any serious behavior during this period of time, the groom could send her back. This was the reason why the bride had to prepare her own carriage. Although she was married, she was still not a true member of the Ma family. When Ma Chiao drove away, Yang Fan did not accompany him. His identity was the most free. He could be considered as a member of the husband's family and also the in-laws' family. Yang Fan giggled as she followed a group of relatives from Mian, Er's family, who had come to send off the bride. They accompanied Mian, Er's carriage, all the way back to the Ma family's residence. She saw Ma Chiao standing at the door in his groom's attire, craning his neck as he waited for a long time. Next, they stepped on the brazier, straddled the saddle, straddled the rice bag, a series of complicated procedures to escort the bride. It was not easy to complete this set of procedures. The two golden boys and girls sprinkled grains on Ma Chiao and pasta. The groom walked in front and the bride half a step behind. They slowly walked into the central room under the cheers of everyone. After entering the central room, it was time for the fan-removing ceremony. The fan-removing ceremony was equivalent to the later lifting of the veil. However, at this time, the bride was not so restrained. She was not sent to the bridal chamber when she arrived at the wedding. In this era, the groom's parents were only responsible for chatting with friends and relatives of the same generation. The main characters of the wedding were the newlyweds, so the fan-removing ceremony was held in the hall. Ma Chiao did not know how to recite the fan-removing ceremony, so he only performed the fan-removing ceremony to Pasta. Only then did Pasta gently move the round fan in front of him. If the round fan was moved, she would still be her, but she would not be her. Pasta's eyes were bright, and she smiled shyly. Even Ma Chiao and Yang Fan, who were familiar with her, were stunned by her charming appearance. The bride was indeed the most beautiful woman at this moment. The horse's mother smiled and gently wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes. The bridegroom and the bride bowed to each other. At this time, there was no ceremony of bowing to each other, and there was no need to bow to heaven or earth. The husband and wife just stood facing each other. Pasta bent down and bowed to her husband. Ma Chiao stood straight and nervously accepted Pasta's bow, then bowed again. Pasta bowed again, and Ma Chiao bowed again. This went on for 4 times, and when the ceremony was complete, they were officially husband and wife. Only then did Pasta and Ma Chiao step forward together and bow to the mother-in-law as the bride. Yang Fan stood at the side and watched them cut off a strand of hair, tied it up with a red thread, and put it into a silk bag to complete the hair-tying ceremony. He watched them pick up chopsticks and eat a portion of stewed meat that had already been offered to the ancestors, completing the same prison offering. He watched them use a gourd that was divided into 2 and tied together with a red string to drink a cup of wine. His eyes were a little moist. It was a feeling of being connected by blood. He had long regarded Ma Chiao and Pasta as his own family. Seeing them complete the ceremony and finally become husband and wife, Yang Fan was sincerely happy for them. South of Luoyang, 5 miles village. It was quiet in the village. 2 old farmers with hoes in their hands were leisurely returning from the fields. In the courtyard of the first family in the village, a woman was holding a dustpan. She was calling the family's chickens and sprinkling the soaked rice over them. Under a big locust tree at the intersection, several village children were playing hide-and-seek. Suddenly, a dozen or so fast horses galloped over from afar. It had not rained for the past 2 days, so wherever they passed, they kicked up a cloud of dust like a yellow dragon. The riders quickly stopped in front of the outer courtyard of a village member surnamed Chiu. The riders were all dressed in the western region's Hu clothing. They all wore short robes with narrow sleeves and a leather belt around their waist. They wore deerskin boots and carried swords on their backs. They looked agile and heroic. They all wore light dew on their heads. Occasionally, the wind would lift up the curtain, revealing a trace of tender white skin. Obviously, they were all women. The courtyard door opened and the round Chiu Yuanwei ran out to welcome them. As soon as his short and fat legs crossed the threshold, he cupped his hands in greeting. "Ah ha ha ha, 7th young lady is here. I am sorry for not going out to meet you. Forgive me, forgive me. Chiu, I haven't seen you for 2 years. Why are you so fat?" With a clear and pleasant voice, a girl used a horsewhip to lift up the dew, revealing a face that was both happy and angry. Her eyes were clear and limpid, and her jade-like smile made her look bright and beautiful. She was charming and charming, but also had the candid and pureness of a Northwestern woman. Her expression, posture, and every movement had the graceful bearing of a daughter of a wealthy family. It made people's eyes light up at first sight. Chiu Yuanwei's smiling face stiffened. He quickly smiled and said, "Seventh young lady, you must be joking." "Ha ha ha!" Chiu bent her ball-like belly with difficulty and asked, "Seventh young lady, why did you come all the way from Chang'an?" That seventh young lady did not answer, and only asked, "I am looking for Shenmu. Is he in the residence?" Chiu said, "This is not a coincidence. Young master went out just after noon and said that he will not be back tonight." Seventh young lady's gaze froze. She bowed her head and asked, "Where did he go?" Chiu shook her head like a rattledrum. Her fat face trembled as she said, "Young master will not tell me his whereabouts." Seventh young lady, why don't you come to my residence and rest for a while? Even if young master did not come back today, he will come back tomorrow." Seventh young lady snorted and raised her chin. "That vixen. Did she go out with him, or is she in your residence?" Chiu did not answer directly. She only smiled and said, "Young master went out alone." Seventh young lady rolled her eyes and snorted. "Then I will find another place to stay." "Humph. Shenmu must have heard some news and went out to hide from me. Let's go. Does he think that I will not be able to find him if he hides?" This seventh young lady was an impatient person. She turned her horse and rushed into Luoyang City. A dozen fast horses followed behind her and rushed out. The hooves of the horses stirred up a cloud of dust. Chiu's round body disappeared in an instant. In the cloud of dust, only half of the fat stump could be seen standing there, and coughing sounds could be heard. At this moment, Shenmu was carrying a box of wedding cakes and 2 rolls of good cotton cloth. He was smiling as he stepped into Ma Qiao's house. Chapter 206. Please come in, please come in. You are. A small table was placed at the entrance of the Ma family's courtyard. An accountant was doing the bookkeeping, and 2 servants were in charge of receiving the gifts. Upon seeing the green-robed young master, the accountant, who had just gotten free, quickly picked up his brush again. Shenmu smiled and said, "I am Shenmu, a friend of Yang Fan. My relationship with the bridegroom is spiritual." "Ha! Oh, Erling's friend." The accountant was also a worker of this place. Upon hearing this, he quickly wrote down his name and noted that he was Yang Fan's friend. This was a favor that should be returned. The servant beside him took the wedding cakes and cloth from Shenmu. Shenmu said, "The bridegroom is busy. I will not disturb him. I wonder which table Yang Fan is at. I will sit with him." One of the servants pointed to the water mat by the wall and said, "There, Beta Persei is over there." Shenmu turned his head and saw Yang Fan sitting at the second table of the water banquet. The people at the same table were all strong men. Everyone was happily eating and drinking. Shenmu smiled faintly, thanked the man, and walked over to Yang Fan's side. Yang Fan was a junior, and the people sitting at the banquet in the courtyard were the elders of the Ma family and the Jiang family. Because the courtyard was too small, there were only 3 tables in total. Even the elders in the neighborhood couldn't sit down and had to eat outside. Naturally, he couldn't be special. Yang Fan was talking and laughing with the old servant, Marquis Wu. Suddenly, someone stood beside him and laughed. "Erling, long time no see." Yang Fan looked up and could not help but stand up in surprise. He said, Brother Shin, why are you here?" Shenmu said, "Haha, I happened to pass by and saw you. I asked around and found out that today is your good friend's wedding day. It is not good to come empty-handed, so I bought some small gifts in the market. Haha, may I sit with Erling?" Quickly, please." Yang Fan quickly asked the people around him to make room for him and asked Shenmu to sit down with him. He also ordered someone to bring a bowl and chopsticks and filled it with water and wine for him. He said with a smile, "Brother Shin, I'm afraid you won't like this cheap wine." Shinmu smiled. I have suffered in the past. I may not have suffered less than Erling. Oh, Yang Fan looked at him in surprise, but Shinmu didn't say anything. He just picked up the bowl of wine, sniffed it lightly, and took a big gulp. Then he picked up his chopsticks and stuffed a piece of fat pork into his mouth. The first table near the door was occupied by the Ma family and some of the neighbors. For example, Auntie Hua and her daughter Xiaodong, who were busy with the Jiang family's affairs, were also here to eat wine. Because the Jiang family had few people and few relatives, once her daughter got married, she was the only one left in the family. She really could not afford a banquet. Therefore, when they were discussing the wedding, the mother of the noodles and the mother of the horses decided to hold the banquet together. This way it would be more lively, especially since both of their families lived in the same place. If they held the banquet separately, many of the neighbors would not know which wedding banquet was suitable. They couldn't possibly bring two gifts, right? When the banquet was held together, Pasta's mother refused to take advantage of the in-laws. She also paid for the banquet. This was also an expedient measure for poor families to make the banquet as grand as possible without burdening themselves too much. Most of the relatives of the Ma family at this table came from the countryside. Because it was rare for them to come to the city, they brought their wives and children along. They strolled around Luoyang in the morning and rushed over in the afternoon for the banquet, filling the table. Among the simple and honest villagers, even if they were illiterate, their conduct would make even the well-educated and well-mannered people in the city feel ashamed of their inferiority. However, there were also some who liked to take advantage of others and were far worse than their counterparts in the city. Because even if those city people thought so in their hearts, they still had to take into account the opinions of others and their own face. But they came today to stay at their relatives' and friends' homes for the night. They would leave early in the morning tomorrow. They did not know these people and did not need to deal with them in the future, so they did not care about this. When the dishes were served, some of them stood up and moved the plates in front of them. A large group of women and children, like a group of sparrows crying piteously for food, swept away the dishes like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds. Auntie Hua could not bring herself to fight with them, but she could not eat a few dishes in a row, so she became angry. Auntie Hua wanted to lose her temper, but although she was tough, today was the wedding day of her old sister's son, so she suppressed her anger and did not say anything. After a while, a few more dishes were served. Those unreasonable people still stood up and fought for the dishes. When they thought that their children were almost full and could not eat these things, one of the high-class women actually dug into her bosom and took out a leather bag. She poured most of the dishes into it, leaving only a little soup and leftovers on the table. Sitting next to that person was an old country woman. Because they were relatives, they were familiar with each other. Seeing the old woman like this, she couldn't bear to look at her and whispered a few words to her. The old woman curled her lips in disapproval and said, "Hey, fifth auntie, if you want to eat, I'll leave some for you. Why do you care about other people's business?" Auntie Hua slowly raised her eyebrows. Although Miss Xiaodong's eyesight was not good, she could already sense that her mother was a little angry. She quickly pulled on her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Mother, this is Qiao Gu'er's big day." Hearing this, Auntie Hua suppressed her anger and let out a long sigh. Come on. Make way, make way. Be careful of the oil." A plate of stewed meat with juices dripping from it was brought to the table. Just as it touched the table, the woman with the leather bag stood up again. She brought the plate of stewed meat to her side and acted as if she was going to pour it into the leather bag. Auntie Hua was seething with anger. She could not hold it in any longer. She slammed her chopsticks on the table and cursed. "You shameless, 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 shameless slave! Did you come to the city to be a beggar? Not only did you snatch food like a reincarnated ghost, but you also want to take it as well. Do you think I'm a clay or wooden statue of a female bodhisattva in the temple that doesn't have the slightest bit of anger?" She dropped her chopsticks, hitting the table and hitting the peasant woman's forehead. The peasant woman was furious and scolded her, "You are such an ignorant shrew of the marketplace. You are as fat as a black pig, yet you still want to eat. Aren't you afraid of being stuffed to death? Are you rushing to 2's house to sell it for a good price? Stinky slave, stinky shameless beggar." Andiwa picked up an empty plate with a little grease left at the bottom and threw it at her. At the same time, she kept on cursing. The woman did not want to be outdone. She could not bear to throw away the plate of food that was still in her hand. She picked up an empty plate from the side and threw it back at Auntie Hua. Auntie Hua could not restrain her anger. She jumped up and threw herself at the woman. The two women immediately began to wrestle with each other. For a moment, some dodged to the side and some tried to stop them. There was also the crying child. On the other side, Yang Fan and Shenmu were talking and laughing. Shenmu said, "Will Erlang return to the palace in a while, or—" "Oh, I won't go back tonight. When the banquet is over, I'm afraid the palace will be locked. I'll find a place to stay for the night and return to the palace tomorrow." Shenmu happily said, "That's good. I don't want to leave the city tonight either. There's a place called Drunken Spring House in the Xiaowen workshop. Why don't you and I go there and get drunk all night and have a good chat?" Yang Fan could faintly sense that Shenmu seemed to be close to him, but he could not guess what Shenmu's purpose was. Hearing him say this, he also put on a cheerful expression and said, "Okay." Then tonight, Yang Fan will listen to Brother Shin's arrangements. Just as the two of them were talking to this point, they heard an incessant noise coming from the side. Yang Fan raised his head and saw Andy Hua was like a ferocious tiger. One hand was grabbing a village woman's hair bun. The other hand was continuously slapping the woman's face. The woman's head was like a rattle drum. That woman could not lift her head up. She raised her hands in the air and clawed wildly, scratching Andy Hua's face. Yang Fan was startled and said, "What's going on?" He quickly jumped up and tried to stop the fight. Ma Chiao and Pasta were in the courtyard toasting when they suddenly heard the noise outside. They quickly rushed out. "Mother, mother, don't fight." "Ayo." Miss Xiaodong hurriedly tried to stop the fight. As soon as Andy Hua and the woman started fighting, many of the woman's relatives rushed forward. Some were trying to stop the fight. Some were helping. Auntie Hua also had some relatives and old friends in the town. Seeing the situation, she did not want to be outdone and immediately rushed forward to help. At this moment, it had already turned into a group fight. When Miss Xiaodong came forward, her vision became blurry. She did not see clearly whether the person who was grabbing her mother was her mother or not. She was flung away by that person's arm. Miss Xiaodong dizzily fell out and almost fell on the table. Yang Fan, who had just caught up, immediately supported her and asked with concern, "Miss Xiaodong, are you all right?" Hearing this, Xiaodong was delighted and happily said, "Erlang, is that you?" Before her voice died away, Yang Fan had already let go of her and rushed into the crowd to stop the fight. Miss Xiaodong's body was empty. Her heart was also empty. Unconsciously, she felt a sense of disappointment and frustration. Yang Fan saw that everyone was fighting like a pot of porridge. He could not help but feel angry and anxious. He rushed forward and separated the two sides. With his ability, it would not be difficult for him to forcibly stop the fight. However, most of the people fighting were women. When Yang Fan rushed forward, he saw that a 70-year-old, white-haired woman from the countryside had also bravely joined the fight. Facing such a group of people, what could he do even if he had a body of skill? Yang Fan expended a lot of energy. Just as he pulled one pair away, the other pair would entangle them again. He could not pull them apart at all. Seeing that their own women were being bullied, the men also quickly took action. When Ma Chiao and Pasta hurried out of the courtyard, there were countless people surging in the small alley. They were in full swing fighting. The tables and banquets were all knocked over and squeaked under their feet. Both of them could not help but be stunned at this moment. In a house rented by an assistant minister, Miss Chi was holding a horsewhip and standing in front of young Master Jiang. Young Master Jiang's brows were tightly knitted. With an annoyed expression, he said, "Chi-Chi, why did you come all the way here from Chang'an?" Miss Chi said confidently, "To find Shin Mu. Do you think that I want to talk nonsense with you? Where is Shin Mu? Hand him over, and I will not bother you." Young Master Jiang said painfully, "He has hands and legs. What does it have to do with me, where he wants to go? Who are you looking for?" Miss Chi said, "Is he not under your jurisdiction? Don't you dare say that you do not know his whereabouts. If you do not tell me, I will not leave today." Young Master Jiang touched his forehead and helplessly waved his hand. "Anu, bring Chi-Chi to find Shin Mu. Go quickly." Chapter 207. Lady Chi-Chi was from the Longxi Li clan, and her full name was Li Lingquan. The Li clan had many origins, and was now divided into two main branches, one from Longxi and the other from Zhao County. The Li clan from Zhao County dominated Hebei, and together with Wang, Chui, Lu, and Zheng, they were known as the five main surnames in the Central Plains. The Longxi Li clan was originally inferior to the Zhao County Li clan in terms of reputation and strength, but the founding emperor of the Tang dynasty, Li Yuan, claimed that his ancestor was the emperor who founded Shiliang, Li Ji. Therefore, he decreed that Longxi Li County would be the Li County, and thus Longxi Li County would surpass the Zhao County Li County and become the Li County. From then on, all the Li clan in the world would use Longxi Hall as the county name. Of course, although the Tang dynasty emperor claimed to be from the Longxi Li clan, it did not mean that the Longxi Li clan was the royal family. The Longxi Li clan had many origins. Some originated from the Yellow Emperor, Gongsun Xinyuan. Some were originally from the Li clan in Shidi, and some were from the Li clan who changed their surname. Although the Li Tang clan claimed to be from the Longxi Li clan, they were the royal family, and from the beginning they were separate existence from the Longxi Li clan. The Longxi Li clan had a prestigious and powerful elder who was recognized as the clan leader and managed the affairs of the entire Li clan. The current leader of the Longxi Li clan was Lady Chi-Chi's biological grandfather. This old man from Longxi was very fertile. In his lifetime he had 17 sons, and 4 of them died young, leaving 13 Langzhens. These people also inherited their father's genes, and all of them were very fertile. Just the eldest son of the first wife, Lady Chi-Chi's father, had 6 sons and 7 daughters. Therefore, Lady Chi-Chi had 6 brothers and 6 sisters, and naturally 6 brothers-in-law. Her 6 brothers were all influential figures in Longxi, and her 6 brothers-in-law were naturally not inferior. If it was not for the fact that Lady Chi-Chi had so many untouchable people behind her, the arrogant young Master Jiang would not have such a headache just by looking at her. Young Master Jiang shook his head helplessly when he finally managed to get rid of Miss Chi-Chi. It's always difficult for women to deal with villains. It was a mess in front of the Ma family's gate. Su Fangzheng and the other elders shouted loudly, asking the servants and Marquis Wu to intervene and stop the fight. Gradually, the situation was under control. Andi Hua's face was scratched until it looked like a cat's face. She was angrily pulled away by someone. The face of the village woman who fought with her was red and swollen like a pig's head. Her original appearance could no longer be seen. As the noise gradually died down, she was still valiantly talking to her man, a country bumpkin named Qi Zhong. "You coward! A man on the other side of the Kong bed is being bullied in his own home. Once he goes out, he can't even fart. Are you just going to watch as your women are bullied?" "Enough!" Su Fangjing bellowed and stopped her cursing. He swept his cold gaze across the crowd and shouted, "Disperse! All of you go back to your homes. If you have the energy, go back home and use it. All of you get lost." When Su Fangzheng was angry, he really had that kind of attitude. The wedding banquet could no longer be held in this situation. Everyone left one after another. Su Fangjing shouted again, "All the servants of the house stay here and help tidy up." The wedding banquet ended on a bad note. Inside the house, in the east room, the new daughter-in-law Pasta was crying on the Kong bed. In the west room, Ani Ma was sitting on the Kong bed and crying silently. Ma Chiao was squatting on the door-sill of the central room. His face was green and purple. He did not know who he should direct his anger at. Yang Fan looked at the servants, who were still helping to tidy up the house. He went over to Ma Chiao and said, "Brother Chiao, you are a man. You should be more responsible. Who are you squatting here and sulking at? The old lady in the west room is crying, and the daughter-in-law in the east room is crying. Are you planning to spend the night with your family of 3? Ma Chiao raised his head and only said the word, "I." His eyes turned red and tears welled up in his eyes. Shinmu also walked over. He lifted his robe and squatted down beside Ma Chiao. He comforted him. "Brother Ma, this is nothing. Whether they are poor relatives or rich relatives, as long as there are a lot of relatives, there will always be those who are close to each other and help each other. There will also be those who are despicable. There will even be some who see that you are living a better life than them and deliberately cause trouble for you. This is really not a problem for you." Yang Fan squatted down on the other side and said, "Brother Shin is right. Today's matter is not about your wedding. If it is not a good idea, and people laugh at you, when the news spreads tomorrow, you will not be the one who is embarrassed. You should comfort Annie first. I will help you to comfort Sister Ning, as long as the 3 of you live a good life. Today's matter at the wedding banquet is nothing." Yang Fan and Shin Mu's words gradually eased the knot in Ma Chiao's heart. After thinking about it carefully, the 2 of them made sense. Ma Chiao nodded and said gratefully, "Yes, you are right. I am a man. Today I am married. I am the pillar of the family. My mother cries, my daughter-in-law cries. I cannot be like this." He wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes and said, "I will go and persuade Mother." Yang Fan nodded and watched him enter the west room. He turned to Shinmu and said, "Brother Shin." Shinmu smiled and said, "Go ahead. I will wait for you here." Yang Fan nodded and walked to the east room. By this time, the servants had worked together to clean up the broken things. The courtyard was clean inside and outside the courtyard, and the messy appearance of the cups and plates was no longer there. Su Fangzheng saw Shanmu, Yang Fan, and Ma Chiao talking together and thought that they were good friends in the army. He walked over with a frown and sighed. "Little brother!" Shinmu cupped his hands and said, "Elder has worked hard, thanks to your help. It is nothing. It is inevitable that there will be some disputes when there are many relatives and friends." As Shanmu spoke, he took out 2 strings of money from his pocket and said, "Everyone has worked hard." "Thank you, Elder." Su Fangjing's face darkened and said, "What are you doing?" Shinmu smiled and said, "Elder, please don't take offense. How would this one dare to humiliate Elder? Just now, many brothers were only focused on helping and did not have the time to eat a hot dish or drink a mouthful of wine. This is a small token of appreciation from me on behalf of Ma Chiao. Elder is a person of virtue and prestige. I will have to trouble Elder for this matter." Hearing this, Workshop Master Su's face softened a little. He thought for a moment, then took the money and said, "If that's the case, I won't be polite with you. Try to persuade Brother Chiao not to take it to heart. I'll lead them away first." In the East Wing room, Myanmar covered her face with a blanket and lay on the bed, unwilling to get up. Today's farce had really made her lose all face. This was the most important day of a girl's life, and in the end it passed just like that. She was really sad. Yang Fan stood for a long time before he slowly said, "Today is an auspicious day for marriage. I think it is not only in Luoyang. I am afraid there are many people all over the world who are marrying off their daughters and wives." Yang Fan's opening speech was very special. Pasta unconsciously stopped crying and pricked up her ears. Yang Fan said, "There is a class of people who marry honorably today. From now on, their families will be harmonious and they will live happily. There is also a class of people who don't marry honorably, But after they get married, their families will be harmonious and the husband and wife will love each other. There is also a class of people who marry happily and think they will live happily ever after. But in the end, they sleep in the same bed and dream different dreams. The fourth class of people who marry unwillingly. Their happy day is actually a sad day and they will not have a good day in the future, so on and so forth. Because of all the unhappy things that happen today, Ningjia, you definitely can't be the happiest person, but you can be the second happiest person. Don't you think so? Pasta quietly wiped her tears. Yang Fan said, "In order to manage your marriage, Auntie worked very hard. If you are happy, she will be happier than if she lived a good life. I know Ningjia is a little sad, but these things are really nothing. Don't tell me you and Brother Chiao are the ones who are embarrassed. Some people don't care about the rules and cause you to feel upset on your happy day. But if you don't get over it yourself, what was originally a small unhappiness, and an unhappiness caused by someone else, will really become your unhappiness. Not only will you be unhappy today, but you will also need a long time to get over it in the future. Ningjia, you are a little older than me. Don't you think this is reasonable?" Pasta gently sat up and stared at Yang Fan. Yang Fan smiled and said, "Go and comfort your mother-in-law. She is even sadder than you are. Then don't remember this unhappiness. Today is your big day. Tonight you are the most beautiful bride." Pasta's pretty face blushed. The sadness and anger in her eyes unknowingly disappeared. After Yang Fan persuaded Pasta to change his mind, he went to the west room with Ma Chiao and coaxed the horses until they stopped crying and laughed. When it was time to rest, Yang Fan and Shen Mu left the Ma family home. When they left the Ma family home, the moon had already risen above the trees. Many houses were quiet without a single light. However, there was one place in the Xiaowen workshop that was brightly lit. This place was quiet during the day and noisy at night. It was the Drunken Spring Brothel, the largest brothel in the Xiaowen workshop. Although there was a curfew in Luoyang, it did not mean that people had to go home at night. They were just not allowed to wander the streets. Therefore, many prostitutes would go to the brothel in the evening to eat and drink, enjoy the singing and dancing, and have fun with their friends. When it was late at night, they would stay at the brothel and find a beautiful woman to sleep with. At this time, the Drunken Spring Brothel was the time when the prostitutes were having fun. The red lights in front of the brothel were hung high, and decadent music drifted into one's ears. When Yang Fan listened to the gossip in the streets, he had heard them talk about the brothel more than once. However, the places that those vulgar men went to couldn't be considered a brothel. They could only be considered a half-closed brothel. They would go in, take off their pants, and leave after that. There was nothing interesting to speak of. To Yang Fan, such a truly elegant place to seek pleasure was a new and mysterious place. When the two of them stepped into the restaurant, there was no group of vulgar women coming to greet them with vulgar words of provocation. There was also no madam's big teapot shouting at the top of her lungs, "Ladies, come and greet the guests." There was only a wine scholar with a towel draped over his shoulder. He greeted them with a smile and was very polite. Shenmu ordered in a very natural manner, "We want an elegant and quiet guest room where we can rest for the night, 7 or 8 simple dishes to go with the wine, and a jar of Jiannan roasted spring. Also, get 6 sisters who are eloquent, beautiful, and good at singing and dancing to accompany us for the wine." When the wine scholar heard this, he smiled cheerfully and bowed slightly. "My 2 guests, this way, please." At this time, because there were 6 families getting married in the Xiaowen workshop, the 4 side doors were not closed yet. One of the servants guarding the north door yawned and was just about to close the door, hang the lock, and return to the sentry room to rest when a group of heroic young ladies suddenly walked in. The 2 in the middle were Tin Ano and 7th young lady. Chapter 208. The room was very quiet, the music was elegant, the dishes were light, and the wine was very rich. As for the beauty, she had cicada-like hair and moth eyebrows. Her body was graceful, and her fragrance assailed the nostrils. She gently and leisurely sat beside him and spoke softly and slowly. If one did not drink, they would be intoxicated. This could indeed be considered a man's home of gentleness. Shinmu was very good at talking. He talked to Yang Fan about his interesting stories in the market, the reason why he entered White Horse Temple, and how he joined the Imperial Army. He listened attentively and would even interject a few words when necessary, which made Yang Fan even more interested to continue talking. When Yang Fan talked about becoming 100 cavalry, he smiled and asked, "What about you, Brother Shin? What do you do for a living now?" Shinmu said, "I seldom come to Luoyang. This time I was invited by a friend and will return to Chang'an very soon. In Longyu I have a few leather goods shops, silk businesses, and a few horse farms. Hee, I have indeed earned some money. However, it is not as impressive as you in the officialdom." Yang Fan said, "I dare not. Actually, I am only a junior colonel in the Imperial Army. As for officialdom, I really cannot be considered." Shinmu smiled and said, "Those who are able to enter the 100 Cavalry Brigade can be released to any Imperial Army unit, and they can be promoted to an official. In my opinion, Erlang, you are still too honest. Actually, with your master-disciple relationship with Master Shui and Great General Wu's appreciation of you, your future will be limitless if you manage it well." Shinmu laughed and poured another cup for Yang Fan. He said, "Of course, you are still young, and it is reasonable that you do not understand these things." However, Shinmu's gaze suddenly deepened. Those who can achieve great things, of course, are fated and lucky, but they are in the minority. Most people had been prepared since they were young. Every step of their future had been taken in accordance with the arrangements that had been made in advance. Most of these people are not ordinary people. Perhaps their fathers are important ministers in court, or their families are rich and powerful. Only their fathers, brothers, and elders have the ability and vision to make arrangements for them step by step. Those young generals who fought with Erlang on the same field as you are all like this." He looked deeply at Yang Fan and said, "Erlang already has luck. It's just that you don't know how to make use of this treasure mountain. You need someone who is familiar with worldly affairs and human relationships to give you pointers and help you plan. You also need a certain amount of wealth for you to manage these connections of yours. In this way, even though Erlang is only a small colonel among 100 horsemen today, it's not impossible for you to become a great general among 10,000 horsemen in the future." Yang Fan's eyes flickered slightly. He raised his cup to greet him, took a sip of wine, and said, "Brother Shin's priceless advice has benefited Yang Fan greatly. It's just that what Brother Shin said is easy to say, but it's difficult to do it." Shinmu was only trying to get closer to him today. Naturally, he would not reveal his true intentions immediately. He laughed and said, "It's not easy to say, but it's also not difficult to say. Actually, what's lacking is still an opportunity. I do business in Longyu and know many influential people. There's no lack of experts among them. I will help you find one." Yang Fan said, "I really don't know how to repay Brother Shin's love and care." Shinmu said, seriously, "Erlang, you're treating me like an outsider. Speaking of which, I, Shinmu, also started from a humble background. There's no other reason why I can achieve what I have today. It's because I value brotherhood. I can make friends with the heroes of the world. I and Erlang are like-minded. If Erlang has any request, as long as I can do it, I won't even frown, even if I have to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of flames." After saying these impassioned words, Shen Mu's expression relaxed. He laughed and said, "You see, we're just talking. Aren't we neglecting such beauties? Come, let's drink." As he said this, he stretched out his arm and embraced the slender waist of a beauty serving wine. He chuckled and said, "Drink with me from a leather cup." The beauty smiled sweetly at him and lowered her head to take a sip of wine. She pouted her bright red lips and moved closer to his. A lady in green who was sitting beside Yang Fan also took a sip of wine. She imitated Yang Fan and moved closer to him. Ladies loved handsome men. This young Lang Jun beside her was very charming. This beauty's heart was already itching for him. Usually, she hated it when guests touched her. Today, she could not wait for him to tease her. However, these two guests chatted briefly. With their experience, they knew that they were not here purely for fun. The two of them only cared about drinking and chatting. They could only serve food and wine at the side and did not dare to disturb them. Now that the discussion between the two of them had finally come to an end, of course, she wanted to be intimate with this handsome young man. Just at this time, the bead curtain was lifted with a schwa sound. Two beautiful young ladies stood outside the bead curtain. Two pairs of beautiful eyes swept inside. Shinmu raised his eyelids as if he did not see the people outside. He quickly pushed away the beauty who was about to jump into his arms. He frowned and said to Yang Fan sternly, "Erlang, you and I got together today. It's fine to drink and chat. Why did you call these girls here?" "Ah." Yang Fan was stunned. Shinmu said with a righteous face, "Ask them to come and play some music and sing some songs. It's fine if they help with the wine, but let's not do such boring things. How can a group of vulgar women be pleasing to the eye?" After saying that, he shook his sleeves as if he was afraid of getting the smell of vulgar women on him. Yang Fan looked at this hero who was easy to make friends with. As long as he had a request, he would climb a mountain of swords and plunge into a sea of flames without batting an eyelid. He was momentarily stunned. Outside the bead curtain, a girl snorted softly and said leisurely, "Pretend. Continue pretending." "Who is it?" "Ah, Ling Quan, why are you here?" Shen Mu sprang up from his seat, surprised and delighted as he walked forward to welcome them. Yang Fan's mouth was wide open in a daze. This guy is too good at pretending. Who is that girl under the curtain? Is she his wife? The person beside her is Anu. Yang Fan's eyes widened abruptly. He looked at the pretty woman who was looking at him with a strange expression under the curtain, and then looked at the charming waitress who was pouting and trying to get close to him. He quickly pushed her away and stood up. "Anu, why are you here?" Shan Mu said something to Miss Chi-Chi in a low voice. Miss Chi-Chi glanced at Yang Fan coldly and said with disgust, "You don't hang out with such a shameless and lecherous person like him." Shinmu was all smiles as he said, "Yes, yes, yes. Aren't we discussing business? How did you find your way here? It's dirty to stand in a place like this. Come, let's talk in the courtyard." Shinmu said and winked at Yang Fan, looking apologetic and innocent. Miss Chi-Chi had barged in. Although Miss Chi-Chi had brought a bunch of women with her, men who were good at martial arts might not be better than them. Chi-Chi came from Longyu, the women of the northwest frontier fortress, regardless of whether it was the Hu or Han, were all good at riding and archery. Their martial arts were also good, and there were very few weak women. As the saying goes, riding a horse with a skirt is like turning a canopy. Pulling left and shooting right must be stacked. If women are already like this, how can men meet again? This was used to describe the martial spirit of the Northwest region. With these people barging into the Drunken Spring Inn, how can the thugs stop them? It was unknown what relationship Shinmu had with Miss Chi-Chi. After he coaxed Miss Chi-Chi out, the few waitresses saw that the situation was not good and left as well. Only Yang Fan and Teneno were left in the room. Yang Fan smiled cheerfully. "Anu, come in and sit." Anu glanced at the seat beside him and said with a straight face, "What kind of identity is it for me to come in and sit?" Yang Fan thought about it and felt that it was inappropriate. He quickly stood up and walked to the curtain and explained shyly, "You've misunderstood. I'm just sitting here drinking and chatting." Tin Eno's face turned cold. "You want me to drink wine with my mouth and chat with my tongue?" Yang Fan cried out in grievance, "No way." Actually, Shenmu asked the waitress to have a leather cup with him, and the waitress beside me followed suit. But I didn't drink. Tin Eno glared at him and said, "That's because I'm here." Yang Fan said, "If you didn't come, I wouldn't have drunk it. Don't you trust me?" Tin Ano's tone was a little soft, but he wrinkled his nose and said unhappily, "What does it have to do with me, whether you drink or not? I'm not related to you, so why are you explaining to me?" When this sentence was said, both of them felt a little uncomfortable. That, Yang Fan coughed and said embarrassedly, "Today is the big day of Brother Chiao Er's marriage. I'm going to the wedding, but because it's too late to return to the palace, I wanted to find a place to stay for the night. But Shenmu brought me here for a drink. Cough. He's the one who called the waitresses." Tin Ano was able to find her way here because she already knew what was going on. When Yang Fan said this, she naturally believed him. She snorted coldly and warned him, "You better stop associating with such a shameless and lecherous person." This sentence was very familiar. It seemed like Miss Chi had said it just now. Women would indeed help those close to them and not reason. Ma's mother's sadness was finally soothed by her son and daughter-in-law's kind words. She rested on the bed under their care, and the newlyweds then returned to their room. In the bridal chamber, the Chinese character Happy was pasted on the wall. On the table, a pair of dragon and phoenix red candles were lit brightly. The quilt was also red, reflecting a joyous atmosphere in the room, slightly diluting the gloominess in the hearts of the two people. However, the shadow of the misfortune they encountered on their wedding day still shrouded their hearts, making them unable to lift their spirits. Pasta sat on the bed quietly while Ma Chiao sat beside her quietly. At this moment, they should be hugging each other happily and being intimate. But looking at Pasta's indifferent expression, Ma Chiao did not have the courage to reach out his hand. After a long time, he sighed softly and said to Pasta, "It's late. My wife, let's rest." With that, Ma Chiao was about to stand up and blow out the red candles. Pasta looked up and shouted anxiously, "Stop! What are you doing?" Ma Chiao said blankly, "I'm blowing out the candles." Pasta quickly said, "No, my mother said that the candles on the wedding night must be lit until dawn. Only then will the days be prosperous and bright. The red candles on the wedding night must not be extinguished." "Is that so?" Ma Chiao suddenly remembered that his mother had also reminded him that, and he actually forgot about it. He scratched his head and looked at the red candles that were just inches away and then looked at the blanket on the bed. He suddenly asked worriedly, "What if the wind is too strong and blows it out?" Pasta laughed, and her face instantly turned red. She could not help but scolded with shame and anger. "You idiot! What nonsense are you talking about?" Ma Chiao saw that her face was bashful, and it was a charm that he had never seen before. He could not help but stare blankly. It was only for a moment before he could not help but say, "My wife, you are really beautiful. It is indeed better to have the candles lit." Pasta became even more bashful. Ma Chiao leaped forward with a gust of wind. The wind only shook the candles slightly, but it blew away the unhappiness in both of their hearts.